In a world that walks the line, there's a rare few who think outside the box together form the crew to break the equations not bound to any rule, exposing to the world the universe's own view. It takes the talent of the craftsman, it takes the mind of the fool to make the vision realize energy and matter in a duel. To a break, to a duel.
Hello everyone, my name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Builds. We got Joe here today and we're talking a little UAP disclosure. So what's going on, Joe?
Not too much, Nathan. How is everybody today? Happy Saturday.
Everything's good, man. They're probably excited to hear about this since we just had the hearing in Congress.
Yeah, I've known about this, hearing since the last hearing. And I always approach these things, with a certain level of excitement because it's such an, excuse me, I have a smoke alarm.
Oh, Joe's got some trouble going on over there. Oh, man. Stop talking about UFOs, man. Turn it off. Something goes off in your house. That's a little creepy, huh? Oh, what's going on, Papa Bale? How's everything going? Oh, man. Yeah, it's really cool. Ninjas. Oh. See if you got that fixed. Very good.
That was my carbon monoxide detector, apparently, because I'm burning incense, possibly with closed windows.
Oh.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Sorry
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Papa Bill was saying you got ninjas in there coming after you.
I'm telling you.
Oh, they're getting us now, Joe.
I'm telling you. Beep, beep, everybody. It's like Roadrunner going on. All right. So, like I said, I always approach these things with a lot of excitement and anticipation and stuff like that. But at the same time, I also know that this is, you're never going to get anything out of it. That anything that's about to be said has probably already been in the internet community for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And, really puts forward, the bigger question, which isn't about anything that they're about to testify, but it's more about the motive as to why disclosure, why now. And I think that tends to be probably my biggest point of interest as to these hearings that they have is what if they're not trying to take our eyes off of something, what are they trying to ease us into and test us out for? And I think that that's really where my analysis of it kind of focuses on, because throughout the testimony, I think one thing that was said more than anything else is this is what I was told I was allowed to share out of this. And told by the people holding the secret. So these leakers aren't even the leakers. They're just being used by the people holding the secrets to leak this information, which is really a concerning factor of it, I'd have to say.
They're the puppets. They get told what to do, and then what is the guy that playing with the little strings, marionettes?
Yeah,
and that's all they're doing. Yeah, that's about it, man. You know what?
Yeah,
if they are getting this ready for something, do you think they'll actually get to the point where they start disclosing the real deal? I mean, do they think we just can't handle it?
I mean, I think that there's elements of that. I think it's also elements of maybe if the United States and its military industrial complex was the first ones to really have their hands on this in a meaningful way, and we're working on programs maybe 15, 20 years ahead of adversaries and stuff, that enough advancement had been made in that short period to have to try and keep it under lock and key to avoid other countries from coming into possession of it. I think that that's commonly an aired reason why it would be so lock and key is national security, they always say. But national security can mean a lot of different things too. If you have domestic issues because of the effect and response of your population. But I think that people are pretty accustomed to, at this point, such high degrees of technology that there becomes a point in time where, you know, the joke is always, oh yeah, so I could beam a video to the other side of the earth instantly, live in real time, but we have, you know, such issues going back to the moon. You know, something that we've already done, and now all of a sudden, so it's I think that people generally with any sort of common sense already kind of could take a look around at what we have, realize the degree of advancement that we have, and then put it in context of the bigger picture and say, wait, if we did this in this short period of time, you mean to tell me that there's nothing else even out there breathing, let alone as advanced, if not more advanced than us?
So I guess, I mean, I kind of look at it a couple of different ways. Do they really think that our military is not bigger than everyone else's? I mean, have you seen the size of our military? The thing is massive. So it couldn't be technology like they knew that they were outmatched. So could it be that we don't want to share it with our partners around the globe? That could be it. You know, if they knew we had it, we might have to share it with them. That I could understand that. As far as aliens and stuff, I don't think anybody in this society, this isn't the 1950s, man. We're all okay with it. You know, this is the generation that grew up watching this kind of stuff. Every movie was made with aliens, you know, all the sci-fi stuff. People, I think, would be more comfortable to know, hey, there's someone else out there. And the fact that they haven't attacked this yet, and that may be for other reasons, but that might be a heartwarming part of the whole thing for now until we find out what they want. But I don't see the problem in disclosing it unless they are trying to say there's some succubuses out there that just want something more. But then again, you know, we all have those around us anyway. So, I mean, I don't know, Joe. There's got to be a better reason, because if it's just a technology, people in their garages are starting to come up with this stuff. They're starting to figure it out already. There's only so many ways electricity can move without you starting to realize what it really is and finding the fundamentals of it. You know, we're not all going to read the same books and be brainwashed. The rest of us are going to do the experiments and say, I don't really care what you had to say. I'm just going to do it until you force me down, and I'm going to show you how it works before you do. And you know what I mean? Then you're going to have to disclose what you have.
You know, so I forget exactly which YouTuber I was watching, but he's one of the more popular ones, and he was talking on the subject. And, you know, he brought up the same point that you just did, which I happen to agree with, which is when you're looking at 100 or 80 or 70-year-old technology that had more or less been suppressed and or hidden, but kind of discovered through the course of time. And people like you and the people in this group are actually reproducing these experiments, seeing real results and understanding the implications of those results. It becomes a little bit counterintuitive to believe that a country like China or Russia or something like this hasn't already long since been there and past that, just what's being done here for their own means. So I think that there's a high improbability that there's no knowledge of these sorts of things in the first place. But, you know, as a layer of the onion, so to speak, once you start to cross these thresholds, you know, the question really begins to be, once those doors are open, what lies beyond? Because if there's anything that I think we've all experienced in life, is every time you think you get to that high point, where at one time you could see no further.
Hmm.
Now that you're there, you see far beyond it. So what lies beyond the closed door? And maybe that's the route that all these technologies ultimately went, and maybe some of them are fathomable only in terms of science fiction, as far as the public familiarity with any of these sorts of ideas, and just the most creative minds coming up with what objectively seems like absurdities, and in fact it's reality, or the more likely sense that whatever is beyond that threshold may be totally unfathomable and inconceivable to us based on the degree of information that we have and have experienced. You know,
Maybe-
I could present it like that.
Maybe it's just bend but don't break. It's let's give them enough where they can validate their experiments, but as long as they get shut down and don't think beyond it, and there's enough trolls out there to tell them that's not the way it goes, this is what we said it was, and you have to follow it. And probably that's what they're relying on, just playing on the human emotion part. I guess as an inventor, you just look at it and go, I already know it's past it. I'm afraid to do it because I know what's past it. That's the biggest difference. I some tests I don't want to do because I know the answer, and I really don't want to produce that effect. If you know what I mean. If you could build tuning forks to rumble the earth, would you really want to? I mean,
Right.
I don't see the point in it. I mean, you could prove a point, but then somebody else somewhere else gets the bat into the stick, and I'm not into that. So I avoid that part altogether.
Well, a lot of those repercussions too, as far as like things that are commonly discussed, it's very perspective based as far as the implications of what, you know, crossing those boundaries and those thresholds may cause in our objective dimensional reality. But if you think about it, things that we do just commonly, regularly, every day, let alone these more exotic things that we do and discover, you know, could very well have a more significant impact beyond our scope of reasoning and senses. So when you open, you know, when you dilate time and we see it as a party trick where we can then find an ends to a means as far as traveling long distances, or seeing you know, traveling back and forth from future to a current time or a past time or something along those lines, and we see it as a party trick and a novelty. Whatever fabric you're breaking or cutting or stretching or manipulating on this end of things could have impact orders of magnitude greater in a higher dimensional reality as a repeating a repeating negative effect, potentially, or positive effect or something like that's thinking outside the scope of reason of, you know, well, this is how we use it to means to our end. But then if there's stuff out there doing other things, how are these simple things that we're doing affecting them, and what are the potential repercussions on us for that? It's a whole entire thing that I've never heard discussed.
Yeah, well, if we're playing with enough of this tech, you know they're creating time dilation fields, and there's no getting around it. And
Nope.
The fact that they're not even discussing it when it comes to Congress tells you whoever's testifying in front of Congress is a puppet. And until we hear the right answer, and when they get up there, we know just to discount the whole thing. It literally is. You have to follow the science to get there. And if the science is telling you where the next level is, and they have no idea what it is, yet they want to throw out these fancy words, let me tell you something. We know you're full of it. We knew it before you walked in the door. And then the guy sitting there going, I cannot disclose. Buddy, just get out of the room. Just go say, I'm sorry, I can add nothing. Let me leave, because that's about all the time I'd like to spend on you. You know,
Well, they take everything with a grain of salt. No, see that there could be potential motivation. Try to gauge what that motivation is. But at the end of the day, even what they did bring to the table, even if it was nothing brand new, even if saying it under oath in front of a congressional committee is just a farce, whatever, however you want to frame it, you still had a guy under oath that has credentials that did say things under oath that frankly are staggering as far as disclosure is concerned. Again, it's not shocking or surprising or new to me or many of the people in this community, let's say, that might loosely or closely follow the subject. But I would say to the average person, saying that there's, confirming on the record that there's government and private, privatized retrieval programs. And then it's like, well, are they craft? Well, what are they? Well, we can't say. Well, but you just said that you're retrieving something. What are they? So what is there to retrieve if there's no physical object? Tends to be a common deductive reasoning.
Yeah. Well, Joe, you see it in the planes that they build. If you're putting out a field in front of the plane that in order to boost the speed of the plane, then you're also minimizing resistance. So inertia comes into play. So you already know, just by what it is was done, that they can reduce inertia already. And you see these crafts moving throughout the atmosphere really super fast. Well, they would have to possess the same process, just a lot more advanced. That's a pretty common thing. So reverse engineering, yes. Engineering from, 30, 40 years ago, that we already knew that they had built then. How much better is it now? If we're advancing our cell phone from the brick cell phone in the 80s, that was this giant brick, until the thing that's super tiny, is sitting in your pocket, there's no telling. They way would advance that to the point where if they reduced, the inertia on something, they would have already taken most of it out of the equation by now. It's not hard. Most people just look at it and say, okay, how do you make the process work? How do I amplify it? They'll do 1,000 tests and find out, okay, this is the next level. And then if we mathematically project this thing out, we should be able to build it, right? It's not that hard. Put in some exotic materials and test each one, and you're there. This is more of a progression of what we've done versus where we started with it. It may have sparked off by some kind of UFO or something we're not used to seeing, but we had our hand to play in this as well. We're well beyond what anyone would think we are. We're into the creating it ourselves category now.
Yeah, there was always that thing, the government's 20 or 25 years more technologically advanced than the civilian market at any given time. That's the time it takes for their development, rollouts, declassification, and then ultimately to be implicated, into new technologies, applied rather into new technologies for the consumer market. I mean, chances are likely, obviously very speculative, that equation no longer holds any sort of water. I don't think that time behind is any longer a thing, because that's a running clock now. I think that all we're ever really getting technology wise that's an advancement over what was previous is really just a repackaged version of something that we've already had. They claim a lot of improvements and things like that, and of course things are getting faster, but also simple files are getting larger, so you don't really see in a quantifiable way the speed increases or the capacity increases, or anything of that nature as far as our tech goes. But cars are still running off of more or less, even electric cars. I would even go out on a limb and say, especially electric vehicles, are running off of 100-year-old technology. There's really been little to no advancement there, except for the fuel systems, which has changed very little since the 1980s and 70s and 80s. They've known how to input tuning mechanically first and then computer and digital later to get better fuel efficiencies out of vehicles. They've known how to do that now for 40 years.
Oh, they knew it back in the, what was it, 70s or 60s when the guy came out with the carburetor that goes halfway across the U.S.?
That's a whole other time. I'm talking about stuff that they didn't suppress at this point. This is all just known stuff. If you look at the timeline just of military stuff that is semi-classified, but exists by name and perceived function only, not how it works or really its full scope of capabilities, right? If you just follow that timeline back, the inertial reduction mechanisms supposedly was first rolled out on the B-2 bomber, which again is going on 40 years of age. And that was when it was rolled out in publication to great avail to the population of people.
So they had it 20 years before.
And exactly, it had already been in service for some time before that. It had been in testing for some time before that and development for some time before that. Basically, that array that was in the nose of that aircraft, which is still known but classified, it realistically is 1960s technology.
Well, yeah, because...
And it's relevant today. It's still relevant today.
You can look at it like T.T. Brown did and then decide that AC and DC were not the answers to the equation. And he knew it as soon as he started using different materials. And the fact that people in this community still haven't caught on to it. They still think, oh, I got to put AC in it, I got to put DC in it. Well, they don't match the energy of the earth. You have to match the energy of the earth in order to play in the field. And it's like putting things in a vacuum chamber that are AC or DC, right? Then you go, okay, or even in a potential level, then you understand how to play inside that field. Well, what does that tell you if you don't take that learning and put it to the earth and find out how the earth's actual energy goes? You know, if you don't think that way, I'm sorry to tell you, you're way behind, because we're on it already, and we're just playing in our garage, man. I don't have some giant facility to do this, but we're already there. So a place like, Boeing or, Skunk Works, something, anything like that would be way, way beyond where I am. And they should be, or they should be embarrassed of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's all sorts of issues with the military industrial complex, all sorts of issues. And I hope to see, pardon me, some of those issues straightened out, in the years to come. I think one thing you said, and it's a little bit of a dance around because it's something I'd love to get into, but we ought not to. But these technologies being in tune with the frequency of the earth, one thing that people often gloss over just in the common knowledge, something that, again, I've never really heard all brought up too much, is how our own standing heartbeat, an average standing resting heartbeat, is 73 beats per minute, which is directly analogous with the to the 10th.
No, I get it.
With the resonance of earth. There's no accidents here. Nothing's an accident. Everything is directly related to the environment in which it is and is created.
It's kind of like that movie Knowing, where once you see the pattern, you can't unsee the pattern. And once you know how this works, then you just completely see all of it right in front of you, and you can't unsee it. It's not like you can brainwash yourself to unsee it. It's all right there, and it's all made sense the whole time. You just didn't know how to read it. And then once you do, it's like, oh, well, this is easy. Now, you know that you create this one thing, you can create the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and they're all within line because we threw away their rule book by taking away their big words, their explanations of things, their overcomplicated ways of looking at it, and just saying, okay, this is the experiment, this is what it did. You know what I mean? Just writing rules like that as you go. Hey, it gets really simple really fast. I don't have to look up a bunch of terminology to tell you how this thing works. It's just simple. And then that's where we're at with it now. So these people going into the Congress and stuff and saying that, it's like, I guess if they did it in the 60s, then I would be like, wow, this is some really revolutionary stuff. But we're not in the 60s no more.
Nope.
That was 60s tech you're trying to push on us. And dude, I'm not into it.
Yeah, that ship sailed. I mean, High Science has said something, and I just want to respond to it real quick. I mean, of course, different animals have different heart rates. I mean, I put this out there, but humans aren't different animals. Like, we are the different animal. And if you ever need to look any closer necessarily to every animal has different relationships with the planet in which it's brought up in. Now, it's quite possible that, and again, this is off the cuff, totally speculative. You know how I work. I don't necessarily believe anything I say, but this is for the sake of the conversation. If we're going to follow consistency here, human beings could possibly be more in tune with their energy centers and so on, with the Earth's frequencies that could have led to us being the beings that we are, which differentiates us from other animals. Again, do I believe that? Do I know that? No. But for the sake of the conversation, there's a consistency there, and you could overlook the consistencies, but when a lot of the same formulas are followed time and time again, you have to realize that we don't live in a world of convenience. So when things conveniently continuously line up with one another so frequently, it generally isn't a random thing. It tends to have more of a cause at that point. And that's just my take on it. But of course, yes, a bat's heart beats like 250 times per minute or something like that. There's no scientific reason why they live through that type of rigor, and then they're able to return to a near dormant state after they land for digestion. There's so many different things that break the rule, but human beings break all the rules.
Well, there is a mathematical way of figuring it out, but we'll just kind of leave it at that so I don't go in the wrong territory. But it's not random.
No.
And it's not unpredictable. All those things fall in line once you understand it the right way. But I'll leave it there.
With bats, though, kind of, if without going there, right? You are what you eat.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's a lot of that. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Got my whole mind working on the wrong subject here now, Joe.
Yeah, there's no wrong subject, Nathan. We know this by now.
All right, let's get back to the UAPs and stuff. So,
yeah.
I mean, do they really think that it's someone else? Are they just being pranked? Is what I want to know. I mean, pilots are very serious people. They don't mess around, and they're straight to the point, and they say what they see. And I don't doubt any of that. So we won't go to that side of it. But if you were making a technologically advanced craft and you wanted to go on a joyride and you have the ability to shut off the cloaking sensor once in a while, would you be pranking somebody? I mean, part of me would. I'd be like, well, we could do this a little bit. You know what I mean? But then the other part of you knows you have to be serious and put the toys away and not cause too much trouble. So what do you think, Joe?
Well, I mean, I think that I mean, if that's the angle you want to take on it, that's cool. Like in that context, I would say that there's certain functionalities of crafts and so on that may not be consistent with being able to maintain a cloak state or you know, an in between dimensional state or something like that. There may be certain functions of craft that could only really operate as visible objects in our atmosphere. What those functions are, I mean, I don't know particularly, but what I can say is that out of the reports of UAPs and stuff that I've seen and people's testimony and photos and videos, and you know, I'm not giving credence to all of it, but I'm simply saying that I think that the behavior observed by these craft have been pretty consistent throughout the reports. Now, I think that some people would write that off as, well, yeah, I mean, because once somebody hears something and then they have it in their head, they see something similar, and then there's some type of relative attribution of what they're observing at that point in time, and that may skew it. But at the same time, yeah, you do have credible people reporting these things. You have videos, and a lot of the movements and ways that they act are very, very similar. And anytime that there's that level of consistency throughout, I think that that lends the credence to not only what they do, but possibly the context in which they may be visible to us.
What's going on, Mike?
Hey, what's going on?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing great. We're talking about UAPs, Mike.
Yeah. Did you see the UFO conference they had in, I believe it was in Washington? They had the hearings about the
Yeah, we were talking about it.
Yeah. So I've seen quite a bit of it. So, you know, it's a step forward, I think, for the government to come out and say, you know, we're not alone. Finally admitting it, you know. But the thing is, they're not, the transparency isn't there. You know, there's obviously technology that they've got that would greatly enhance our society and help us out. But still keeping in mind, you know, certain things that are sensitive that could be, you know, used as a weapon, obviously. But, you know, some of the stuff should come out, especially the energy stuff. Like, you know, you can only keep a secret for so long, right? Before
Well,
something's going to come.
Part of the problem with the energy stuff is you can't create one without inherently creating all the rest. So that's where you're at with it, because it's a very slippery slope once you understand it. It goes real fast into something that could be very bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, okay, if you release the stuff, you know, what are the intentions of the people that have that technology? Are they going to use it for the wrong purpose? So it's like, to what degree of the technology should be released?
I think where it lies at the core is that, as we saw from Gerald's video that he put out yesterday, I think that sort of exemplifies it. Whenever you're looking at these sort of technologies, you're looking at layered effects, and depending on the layer of effect that you're desiring to get out of it, so to speak, even though they all work in conjunction with each other, you know, they're separate and tuned functions. You don't really get one without the other. There is no necessary separation, and if you do away with any one attribute, then you lose the rest. So what it kind of boils down to is the more usable consumer, call it, technologies that could be garnered out of this, you know, really results in giving everybody a potential, you know, potentially harmful device. And it's something that I had actually discussed on another cast when the same sort of topic came up, and I said, you know, they're with through 3D printing or some other means, there would have to be a way where it's a solid state or something like that, where if you even chipped away at the thing, the circuitry is gone, and then you can't alter it from its solid state. And if it's tried to be altered, then the whole entire circuitry is screwed up on it, and it'll do nothing. So that's really the only way to probably
make a device that can't really be tampered. It can only be used for that specific application.
Yeah,
That's
well,
it.
Right?
if you create a bismuth capacitor, it's going to do the same thing. They all grow in their own shape and form when you grow them, and if you put them in between two aluminum plates, then they're going to be together and they'll work. You cut anything off of it, it's broken. It'll never work the same again.
Yeah.
and similar circumstance. Yeah.
Yeah, like if they were to release any kind of technology that they have hidden for a long time, I think one of them that they should disclose, that would propel us or at least advance things in a good direction for the collective all, would be superconductors. I know laboratories, around the world are working on this stuff, but if you can start feeding out seed information to get society to start learning or go in a direction that they never thought of before. I guess like the holy grail would be a room temperature semiconductor that's a super, low conductivity, right?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I would agree that anything super conductive and just eliminating the inefficiencies of and waste of a system, and then being able to utilize some of the stuff like what's already being done in this group, where the energy aspect of it, whether it's a vehicle or a home or whatever, is just taken out of the equation. I think that that's good, but again, when it falls right into that same category of not having one without the other. And here's one aspect of the disclosure that I'll put out there. And we were talking about time dilation before, right? So now you disclose the technology. One thing leads to another, and now all of a sudden you have an entire society of people that want nothing more than to go back in time and fix their mistakes. Like think about human nature. If you could just undo one simple thing in your life, or just say, you know what, I screwed this one up so bad, I need to speed ahead a little bit to where like nobody knows my name. Whatever.
Well, the other thing is too. This is the problem. Making a decision. If you were able to pull something off like that, it would be a paradox. Now, what of you think that the paradox that you're going to create is going to fix things? It could actually make it worse. It could cascade in a different direction, and that's where that fine line is, like creating a paradox that you think is going to be better, but actually would make the situation worse.
Yeah, I think that that's such a dense, topic as far as what the implications could be. And then it goes right into what is consciousness and what's our place in the world. Like it's such a cascading matter that it becomes almost like, are we really sitting here wondering why it hasn't been put out there when it's so the implications of it are so profound and possibly destructive? What do you do to the matrix when everybody has access to that?
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you do to, like, what happens then? Does the system just collapse and that's it? Yeah, probably. To be honest, it does.
So it's like, I lost my train of thought there. I had a brain fart. Sorry. It's you're creating a paradox, which you think is going to be better for you, but that paradox could affect everybody around your reality, right? It's not just focused on you. It's anything that's within your proximity is going to be affected by this paradox.
Hmm.
So, it's like, do you really want to tamper with the dynamics of normal step by step reality as we know it? Do we have the right to interrupt that or change a direction in that reality matrix? So it's like, are we playing a dangerous game by trying to change reality as we have it? Reality is a normal flow of events after each other in a certain direction, and everything's got to coincide with everybody else at the same time. So when you start playing around with that, that's where things can really backfire.
Yeah,
So
it's like I don't. It's like that, and that's where the Pandora's box of this all really sort of is.
right, there was a good movie that was released. I'm trying to remember the date when it was released, but it was called Almanac. The movie Almanac, where
Mm.
a kid, his father was secret engineer, and he died in a car accident, and he was working on a time machine in his basement. So, anyways, after he passed away, his son and his friends figured out how to make it work. And it's actually really good. It was really well done. It's called an Almanac.
Yeah, so I'll have to watch that. I've been wanting to
Yeah,
watch
check that
it.
out.
So that shows you exactly what will happen if you start tampering with time and how you think it's going to better you, but it's actually could really screw up things for people around you.
Well,
So
right, that's like butterfly effect is sort
exactly
of,
same thing. Yeah.
yeah. So the whole entire thing's dicey. I mean, as far as the hearing goes, I don't think no information was given. I think that there were certain admissions made on the record once and for all that were, leaps and bounds. But like Nathan said earlier, I mean, it's a day late, a dollar short on this sort of stuff. Realistically, I think that when they disclosed it for the reasons that they did, back in the 50s and 60s, and then when they kind of halted whatever development they were making at that time and advertising, that was actually like prime time to roll that stuff out to people, because they were in the nuclear age. They believed in that,
Right.
this new energy source. If you would have then went that one step further and said, and this, it would have been not shocking. I mean, it would have been shocking, don't get me wrong, but I think it would have been palatable to a society that just embraced an entire new energy source um, and ended a war based on that technology, and the acknowledgement already being out there that this is both good and bad and safe, and could be safe and unsafe. That paradigm already existed with nuclear, and it was well known and accepted at that time in society, and it was right on. It was in the design of your furniture and your light fixtures, and it was on every magazine cover, and it was in the science kits that you gave to your kids on Christmas, and it was everywhere. And that would have been an ideal time, and everything had a rocket ship on it. Everything was space. We were trying to. That was such an open-minded time for that type of exploration, and people were at that time open to whatever was found.
Yeah, well,
They were looking forward to that discovery. The moon landing was celebrated, and the unknown of what was going to come of that was like the great anticipation.
they
know
themselves
about.
may have created the time paradox in this by not disclosing it naturally at each step that they took after going to the moon, and now they're trying to fix their mistake.
Yeah,
And
that's right. Exactly.
it's just a bad thing, because it would have been a natural progression of society, and we've all been under those rules and been just fine, and it wouldn't be shocking to what it is now. Now
Right.
they have stuff they can't explain. So now they have to backtrack it and try to do something and not look shady doing it.
Right, like in that conference, they were talking about the free energy that comes through, with these craft. So they're openly admitting that this technology definitely exists, and the problem is they've been holding on to it for so long, and now that the lid is starting to crack open, this information is going to hit the mainstream, and then what I'm working on, what Nathan's working on, what Gerald's working on, uh, that might start to give us some more credibility, propping, so to speak. Thinking, okay, maybe these crackpots that work in their basements, maybe they're not such crackpots after all, right? And
Well, wasn't that a big theme of the overall tone of the hearing?
right,
Especially with that guy from NASA. He's like, can somebody bring us up to speed and tell us what's really going on and fix the physics? He even said the physics
yeah,
is all over. Like, can we fix the physics and stuff so we can be able to
yeah,
get out of
exactly.
the hole that we've been in for so long? Because I mean, the whole of physics is the psyop. That was the
Right.
psyop.
It was the disinformation of academia, and it's like a religion. It's a religion that's gone bad, right? And it's suppression and not allowing, like Pons and Fleischmann with their cold fusion stuff. Those guys were, basically stonewalled to the point where they left the country, and never to see light of day again. And Joseph Newman, another one, he was fighting for his patents, with the Supreme Court, and they still lost. And he died as a miserable, inventor, and many others. Those are just a couple of examples of people that been suppressed of their technology, which is valid technology. Say like the Joseph Newman's motor. That motor is real. That motor, I built that motor. I know what it does, and that's kind of basis of how my Renegade device works, basically on the Newman theory, right? With a twist of the Robert Adams setup. So
Now,
this stuff's good.
I want to ask a speculative question. I don't know how much you know about this or don't. I mean, it's an American issue, but Nathan too, if you know it. We had a couple of colliders in the United States that were built, and we had discussed them actually because one of them is at Brookhaven, which was something that we had discussed previously when we brought up Warden Cliff and Brookhaven and Montauk and all that. So there's a collider right on Long Island, not too far from where I live, and as far as I know, that was the first large collider in the United States. All the other colliders were like laboratory colliders prior to that, as far as I'm aware. Right.
Yeah.
Then there's this back and forth, and we plan to have this absolutely massive collider we funded. It's through Reagan. It's back in the 80s, and mind you, Reagan at that time was going down that whole Star Wars road of technology, which, just to put into perspective how old directed energy weapons are, that was going to be implemented in the early 80s. So when they're telling you, oh, the directed energy weapons on our naval vessels these days and in development, this and that, yeah, it's in development for a ship, except you could have shot it from outer space 40 years ago. I digress. It's one of these things where they canceled this collider. It never ended up happening. Then Europe goes and does their thing, and then there's all sorts of secrecy and speculation around those projects.
Yeah.
They fire the thing off all the time, and you get, maybe if you're lucky, one report a year from them.
Yeah, you know what? Like as far as like the time travel, time dilation stuff, it looks really cool, but you're playing with fire. You really truly are.
I agree.
Like that technology should not get into the average person's house, because the implications of it is just too crazy. Like
Yeah. there's a lot, but there are a lot of different speculations as to what time travel may look like. You know, it's not necessarily just this paradoxical thing. There's, I guess, future travel being different than, like, it depends on which way you're going. But as far as like going back, I believe that you are separate of whatever else was going on at that time, meaning that,
Right.
yeah, you could still possibly create a paradox in terms of something that you do, but you're not necessarily able to undo something that you already did, because there you are doing it regardless, like a meet
Right.
yourself sort of situation. There's one
Yeah.
there's one thing. Then there's also the idea of each of our consciousnesses potentially residing in its own semi-universe,
Right.
where
Parallel universe.
everything else
Yeah.
is branching off, and then it's a timeline. So there's all sorts of different weird stuff where, like, you know, you exist in my timeline right now from my perspective, and I exist in yours.
Right.
But if there's variation from one to the other, my reality continues to be my reality, yours continues to be yours, and that's that.
Right. Yeah.
Well, hold on. Let me give you a time paradox. If they said that the visitors that visited, what was it, the 60s or something like that, came from Venus, and we look at Venus now and we see what it is, you obviously must be dealing with the time travel paradox already. You can't survive on the surface of Venus. But if the aliens were from Venus, then you already believe in the time travel paradox. So that's just kind of the way it works. If you believe those stories, and then you must have to believe that, because that's the only way it works. It's not in our time that planet's worth anything right now.
Maybe, you know, here's a crazy theory. Maybe we are going through a time travel experience and not even realize it. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe that's what the Matrix is. We are in a time machine right now where parallel realities can collide, you know, like the Mandela effect, where people thought, Nelson Mandela died in jail in the 80s, and another reality that's parallel to what we are living in. We all know him. He became the president of South Africa. So, are we living in a time machine right as we speak right now in this physical reality?
Oh, we're in a time dilation field on the Earth.
Well,
Absolutely.
right. We're in like, by virtue of time passing, we are in that circumstance. It's just how fast and which direction it moves.
Well, as soon as they
Right.
told you that the space station was one time and the Earth was another, you already
Right.
knew we were in time dilation.
Right.
Yeah, it a way to think about it would be like if you're on a moving train. You know, what is that train doing?
Right.
From the active perspective, if it had no windows and it was perfectly smooth because it runs off of the superconductors that we don't have, then realistically you're just in a you're just in this train car where it's moving along. Now, I mean, if that train car goes faster, then all of a sudden, you're moving down the tracks faster. If the train stops and then goes into reverse, all of a sudden you're back from where you came, and that's sort of that too. But you're on the train car.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing is, what's it like? And I could say this from my meditative stance and stuff of things. What's it like when you jump off the train car?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's it like when you jump off the train car?
There's another theory I heard one physicist, I forget his name, but he says basically what time travel is when you travel through space at a high rate of speed relative to your ground or where you stand right now, you're traveling forward in time. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around that theory, but it's actually true. To travel through outer space at a high rate of speed, you're time traveling. So if you're going, near the speed of light for 1 year, and then you make a U-turn and come back to Earth, well, everybody's aged 40 years, right? So
Well, hold on. In order to go that fast, you have to dilate time already. So,
right. Speaking
in
of which,
coming,
that we have that tech to do that. Yeah.
yeah, and then coming back, you're going to dilate time. So there's no guarantee that somebody's going to be much older by the time you come back. You may go there and back, and it may feel like nothing's passed for them, but for you, it's been a lot of time because you went out, did the research, and came back. So
Right.
if you're in a time dilation field, it changes the complete understanding of getting there. We may not need to move just as that fast as we think we do. We just need to manipulate the time in which you think it takes to get there and back. That's it. It could be a whole reverse in your mind of how it works. As long as you're dealing with time, it's a whole nother equation.
Yeah.
It is.
Definitely
Yeah.
valid. Definitely valid. Yeah.
Well, back to the hearing thing. One interesting thing that they had brought up was the nature of the craft and the nature of the non-human biologics, so to speak, which I kind of found interesting. One thing that they had said was that we're constantly in a state of redefining what constitutes living and what constitutes intelligent life. And when I think the example that they used is they used to think that, and this, it's always funny how these things connect like they do, because it taps right into what we had been saying about life on other planets the other day, right? We once thought that all life required oxygen, that was a requirement. But then you find anaerobic bacteria, which is something that I kind of tapped into. And I said, yeah, they're anaerobic bacteria. They're sort of like a closed system. They don't really require the external environment that life generally requires. And that was the example that they gave, was anaerobic bacteria. But then at the same time, who's whatever the requirements of that is, who's to say that there isn't a different set of requirements that life could exist in? That's just totally exotic and foreign to something that we would generally consider, like etheric. Let's be real. Like, that's sort of what's left at the end, right? It would be like an etheric form of intelligence. And then they went into talking about plasmas and things of that nature, and then talking about how some of these craft, that there were non-human biologics, but they wouldn't elaborate on it. And I think what they were alluding to, and again, I really can't say because they didn't say much, but it was almost like it wasn't a manned craft, so to speak. Like, even if it was non-humanly manned, like the crafts themselves may have, the crafts themselves may have been the intelligent function.
Right. Exactly. The actual craft itself actually could be that life form.
Yeah, like a thinking and responding. And that was one thing that they said, is that if you're just looking at life as something that's able to respond to a stimuli in an environment in a calculated fashion, that would constitute intelligent life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember this engineer. His name was David Adair. And when he was a young kid, he was apparently, he was a rocket engineer. And he got in with the right people, and they took him to Area 51. And they brought him down, I don't know how many stories into the complex. And they showed this, they took him into this room, and they showed him this alien engine that was recovered. And it turned out, his best analogy of what he thought it was, that the engine was actually alive. It was actually a life form. It responded to his touch of his hand, just his feeling of excitement actually made the engine change colors into like bright oranges, reds, silvers. It actually felt what he was feeling. So, the fact that it was a machine. So, do we classify a machine as a living entity? So
Well,
that kind of
that sounds like empathetic intuition, sort
right.
of like
But
stuff.
if it's a machine, they said it was an engine from a spaceship. That okay, how is an engine alive? Like a life form. It obviously felt his excitement when he touched the machine, and it responded to it. So this goes back to, what do we classify as a life form? Does it have to be a biologic? Can it be a machine, or both?
Well,
So
I mean, what's interesting is they did specifically on several occasions use the word biologics, which to me is an indicator of something organic.
right,
But who's to say that something organic can't fulfill mechanical function?
right,
It does all the time. Everything that we have is an emulation of something in nature. It's just an improvement upon it and an exploitation of the same exact concepts that are already in play.
yeah.
So,
Like
if
like
yeah,
yeah, like Ben Rich, the head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, on his deathbed, basically said, whatever you've seen on Star Trek and all these space programs, he says we've been there and beyond. He says whatever crazy thing you could come up with in your head, we've tried it, or he thought there was no use pursuing it. So that's a pretty big statement coming from a guy like him.
well, I mean, let me ask your opinion on that. I mean, what do you think about the no use in pursuing? Been there, done that, no use in pursuing. Does that mean that they've been there and done that, and it's just the means doesn't justify the end, or does that mean that they've been there, done that, down that hole to accomplish it, and it's just not feasible?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a hard one to answer, really. Um, it has to do also, I think a huge amount of this has to do with metamaterial sciences. And I think that's where the biggest developments in technology, especially what I'm working on right now, is working with the elements, working with the building blocks of existence. And that's what I'm implementing in this power cell technology. So
Yeah,
yeah, if you know how to manipulate the building blocks of existence, that's a very powerful tool. If you know what you're doing and know how to manipulate those particles of existence, extremely powerful.
for
And
certain.
basically, yeah, and basically nothing is impossible anymore.
I mean, I've been saying as far as like metamaterials and material science stuff is concerned, right from the first time I was on here. In fact, it was like one of the things that I was most fascinated about with my rock, was the applied application. And I always saw ceramics as being the number one contender for any sort of metamaterial, just because of the forms that it takes and the fact
Right.
that it's a room temperature, water-based solute, and you could actually have crystal structures form of other elements within it,
Yep.
and it has semiconductor properties.
Yeah, exactly.
So
And that's
uh,
a lot
I
of
think
what
that's
I'm
where it's
doing.
at, man.
It is. It totally is. I totally 100% agree with you. And that's a lot of the science that's going into this power cell technology. Everybody says, oh, you're making just another battery. No, this is not a battery at all. There is absolutely no galvanic action in this power cell.
Well, I go back to the thing of life. I have no problem if it's any kind of life. You can be pure light, and I'd still be okay with it. You be pure gas. You're not going to have a problem here unless it smells bad. And as far as the rest of them, any form you take, as long as we can see you or talk to you, I'm pretty much okay with it. You know what I mean?
Right. Like
Yeah, but
it
I don't
even
know if
goes,
it's any of those things, man.
it
I
could be
don't.
even It could even be like, where people see ghosts. They're probably life forms, but they are in a plasma state. There's still a consciousness attached to them,
Yeah,
because they're able to interact with a physical, biological like us that's alive in the physical reality that we live in. Just because it is a dead soul doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They
It also
exist.
doesn't mean that it can't interact. Like it might
Right.
have certain functionality in that state. Maybe it's even different functionality than what we would generally consider to be objective. Like it doesn't necessarily have to move a mug across your kitchen countertop
Right.
or something like that. Maybe it could the resonance of it affects the overall resonance in your room, changing all sorts of attributes for good or bad. It could be for good or bad.
it could be when people cross over to an energy state that they create a time dilation in their themselves and they cannot move on, and that's why you get a ghost. It could very well be it didn't transfer correctly, and it became an anomaly instead of the norm. And
Right.
if that's the case, then it could mean that we have something beyond what we are to look forward to, and that would be cool. And then that means that
Yeah.
if there's extraterrestrial life, they could already be there.
Right. Exactly. And we have to really reevaluate what we call life.
Absolutely.
That I think that's what it really boils down to.
I mean,
So,
it's a personal opinion of mine, and it's just based on my own beliefs and experiences, I suppose. But life, the objective physical reality of life is the what we have to contend with. The life itself is the life force that you have within. One interesting kind of speculation I had when they were saying human and non-human and this and that, as far as like the phenomena are concerned, was an outlandish thought came to me that didn't seem that outlandish after I kind of broke it down. There's a possibility that some of these plasmatic formations and stuff that we see that act as forms of intelligence could very well be like human psychonaut situation, where you have human beings in deep states that are able to do forms of astral projection and higher forms of meditation that allows that to be dispersed the same way that it would, and not even subject to time. So what's odd about it is that something, let's say, observable today for us, that could be a shamanistic force from millennia ago, or could be something from the future, as far as, because once you exit that realm and you exit that Planck's distance and you're free, you jump off the train cart, so to speak, everything's stacked. Your 3D collapses to a sandwich of everything and always.
and I think personally that is kind of what the lost knowledge of our forefathers, from thousands of years ago, look back to the Aztecs and the Incas. They all knew this, what we're talking about right now. They understood it, but this is lost knowledge. And today, most people don't even think about it. It's just not in their knowledge base to really understand that, life, what we see in a three-dimensional physical reality that we live in, that's it. Well, I hate to break the news to you. There's a lot more to existence than just the physical three-dimensional reality that we live in together. So
That's an objective truth. Yeah. And the higher dimensionality is interesting in the sense that at the edge of the veil, so to speak, is the mechanism that makes this particular segment work. The same as if you were to draw on a piece of paper two-dimensionally, there would be no drawing on the paper but for you drawing on the paper in this upper dimension. And very likely, once you go beyond our time space that we're part of here, and you go on to the mechanism in which makes this move in that fashion, is the key things that influence our physical reality.
Well, what would be
what makes it go, what influences it, everything.
What would be a really messed up situation is if your body actually was electricity or something like it that came out as the soul and went back into the atmosphere of the world. And then by setting off a bunch of nuclear explosion everywhere, we're directly ruining that existence for everyone. That would be the ultimate human consequence to what we're doing, is that by affecting this reality when we're in, it may be affecting a second reality that we're destroying, that we really shouldn't be messing with at all.
Exactly. You nailed it right on the head. Nailed it right on the head.
So to backtrack to where we were, okay, based on what you were just saying, where we brought this, right? So why not just come out with it? It's only a flying saucer. We can handle it. Oh, it's only an alien or something. We can handle it. But what if it's just with that comes the rest, and the rest is reality, and reality is, it's not maybe the point of life is to be independently seeking that reality, and by virtue of exposing it is to ruin it. And that's the actuality of it. It's there's no way to come out with one thing is the problem. And then knuckleheads like me and you and every other good blue-blooded American who wants the government out of their business and just like, hey, listen, as long as nobody's harming anybody, like live, let live, and let's do the best we all can, and whatnot.
But that's the problem.
We don't want them holding all this stuff and saying, oh, well, we have the free power, and we could give it to you cheap or nothing, but nobody else could have this, and you can't know what we're doing. We don't tolerate that.
Yeah, but
maybe,
okay.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
It could be that if we knew how it worked, we could destroy them, and they would fear that more than us getting ahead. And that might be an entire problem unto itself. If you knew how their reality works, as the species that we are, it would ultimately be destructive to them at some point, more than it ever would be putting off the one bomb here or there.
That's very true. And if I actually watched, it was only this morning, it just instantly came up, and it was on. It was like an interview with a famous North Korean defector. And they talked about all the things that they experienced living and growing up in North Korea. And all of it was designed to maintain the illusion that, you can't step out of line, and they don't even know about stepping out of line because it's literally, there's no words for it in their language. So they exclude certain words out of their language purposely, and when there's no descriptive form for it, and then the environment harbors against it, it just simply isn't in existence. So people don't love each other. People believe that the leadership is God. They believe that everybody else is out to get them, and that they've been waging war for hundreds of years against, the American bastards. That's what they call, right? And it's all of these layers of things that they do to these people to keep them exactly where they are. And it has nothing at all to do with, these people are hungry, they're starving, all this stuff, right? And it has nothing to do with their ability to be able to produce enough food for everybody. The point is that by keeping everybody starving, it's where you have them right where you want them. And even though this feels freer than that, there could be a huge paradigm shift if the dependence on, first of all, if you cut the energy consumption cost out of every single application, transportation, manufacturing, everything start to finish, think about what that does to the economy immediately. It improves the economy so vastly that, you know, there's not inflation, there's deflation. There's enough products moving around, and with everybody able to afford it, and everybody able to up their production because the costs are so low and the scarcity isn't there.
Well, there'd be a global renaissance, you know, if that were to
And
happen.
right, and what happens when people have everything they need? Then they go after the things that they want. Now, what happens when the things that they want are behind the veil of a handful of people with power? What happens when the same thing that gave you the technology also lets you turn the table and say, you're not doing this to us anymore?
Now, be careful what you wish for. You know, when you think, hey, I'm not retired, so I want to get retired so that I can do all the things that I can't do now. But you're making time in your life to do them now. And then when you get retired, it's, man, I just want to sit on the couch and I really don't want to do those things that I made time for before, where they're all right in front of me right now. So you have to be careful what you wish for, because some things, you know, are structured in society based on human behavior.
Absolutely.
And you have to follow it, because it's not all what it's cracked up to be all the time.
Yep. Tie it right into our AI conversation from last week, where
Yeah.
it turns into, okay, so why are we here? What's our purpose? What are we doing?
Yeah, what's our point? Yeah, what's the point?
As somebody who, you know, and I'm not saying this from a point of pride, I was very, very wealthy at one time. Very, very wealthy. Let me tell you something. I'm happier now than I was then, and I don't have a pot to piss in. And there's a certain novelty about being able to snap things into existence. And I don't want to take away from that, because, I mean, listen, it's cool, it's good, and it keeps you going. But it never ends. And that same satisfaction that you get out of breaking your rear end for something and then achieving it, you know, that's lost entirely. You know, you have to find other ways to be constructive at that point, you know, to have that same sense of satisfaction. That's why at that time, I mean, I was doing a lot of woodworking and stuff like that, because I realized that if I wasn't creating something and actually working to be like, here it is, and this is what like, that had to fill that void.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like you know, creating a quest, your own personal quest, which becomes the root of why you exist, what you stand for, what you want to achieve. You create yourself a quest, then you're working on something being constructive, and you know, the quest is just as much fun as getting the prize at the end. But I think
Right.
even more satisfaction, I think, is the quest. And that's what I'm doing right now, is my quest. So very happy
Yeah, well,
that way.
it goes to, if they put out free energy tomorrow, it would be horrifying for society. You'd think it'd be great, but it's not. You'd have to bring it in slowly. And you have to let markets ease it in order to not cause pure chaos around the world. You can't just give everybody everything for free. They have to be able to earn some of this stuff. And a society that doesn't earn anything, they don't know any better, abuse it and destroy things. So ease them into the right technology, get it set so that they understand it. And this is probably goes to the disclosure as well. They're going to ease you into it. They're not going to give it to you right away. People like me would understand it and just be like, this is good. Let's have some coffee with the alien and be done. Other people, they need a teddy bear and some crayons for an election. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's just a different point of view. You know what I mean? So I guess for the sake of those people, we'll go slow.
Yeah. More like creating better tools, right? Like, you know, before we never had lasers. Then eventually lasers came around. and I work in the steel industry, and we use lasers to cut steel. So there's a practical application that's good for society for manufacturing, right? Laser cutting, water jet cutting, stuff like that. Tools that would better or make building stuff easier,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, at this point, it's always hard to say whether or not you're on the right path or not. And being humans, I think the number one thing that we always do is uh, reflect and critique retrospectively something that might have been perfectly fine in context at the time, could have been done better, but wasn't. And then you hang your hat on that. I guess we're just taking it as it comes, like the reality being that um, all the greater forces that be for most people is outside of our control and reach anyway. And there's only so much time that you could really spend worrying about the bigger things. Where that tends to bite itself in the rear end is where the cumulative effort and the voice of the masses, when they're all shouting the same tune, then things can change in that direction. So there's that fine line between um, not spending too much time and concern worrying about it and voicing it, but at the same exact time, being aware enough of your environment, your peers, and everything else. And then once you realize that more people than not are on a certain page, then it's time to up the volume and amplitude of the entire situation to get this, to get the changes. I think that's where society's at right now. I think that's where society's kind of been at, where
Well,
there's frustration just generally.
they may need a catalyst. So basically, one person comes out with the next technology, and any people that are aliens wouldn't want to help you until you had it. But once you had it, they'd have to guide you in the right direction. So if you come across something that's not normal and someone's coming out with it, it's going to be the next big thing. That's when they would probably step in and start to pace you out and come out with it slowly. You know what I mean? Because there's people that think beyond the scale of where, everybody thinks we're at as a society already. And they'll blow you out of the water with what they actually know, stuff that is right in front of you and you just can't see the connection to it. So once they come out with that, they have their catalyst, and then they have to define it and hone you in on it, or else it's going to be, a very, very bad side to it. And I'm sure they already know what it is. We're probably already subject to it. Do you remember back in the day when they used to give nuclear power stuff to people to grow their plants? I read a book on that, and it was like, are you kidding me? With what we know now, and that's what they were doing?
Yeah, it's like using
One way to get a grain tomato.
It's like here's an idea. Somebody created, say, like the nail gun. Every guy who works on construction uses a nail gun, but that nail gun could also be used as a weapon, right? So when you're making an invention for the intended purpose to be something good, there's going to be other people out there they're going to say, oh, what can I use? How could I use this as a weapon? And that's where it gets wrong. So it's like you have to think, what I mean?
I get that, Mike. Maybe in Canada, though. In America, we have guns for that. But nonetheless, but anything is a weapon. An idea, a word, a fist, a pencil, a rock. There's nothing that cannot be used for a purpose other than its constructive, useful purpose. Everything has that same double-edged sword to it. So, and I think that's been a huge conversation as far as like rights go and stuff like that too. Is it's not even the intent necessarily. If the action doesn't happen, it's the action that is subject of consequence. So the possession of, or this could be used as, and all that, it's all minutia. It all comes down to what you actually do with it that should be concerned about. But when you're talking about things of this magnitude, that's where it gets dicey, because we do know that 100% of the time something will be misused. 100% of the time by somebody.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So when you have something that is capable of creating, a world-ending event or something, or screwing up time forevermore for everyone, that tends to be like, okay, well, that's not something that you need to necessarily have. And I feel weird saying that, because like it actually goes against a lot of like the other fundamental values that I hold, in contrast. But I never said to give everybody nukes,
Yeah. I guess it's a moral dilemma, isn't it? You want the next level. You want the next level of understanding technology, but you don't want everybody to have it. Like, not all the wrong people to have it anyway. The benefit of society, yeah. So it really comes down to, how far do you want to push it? Like I said, I don't do certain experiments because I don't want to know the answer. Even though I know the answer is it'll work, I won't do them because I don't want that responsibility put on my shoulders of that experiment being out there and for other people to use it in the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, I guess let this all be a lesson on what happens when the creation starts to create. It's, and that goes right back to that AI situation. When the creation starts to create, that's when things start to get interesting. Yeah,
we have to mature as a species first, I think. And if you release certain technologies out too fast, and us as a species haven't evolved enough to be responsible to use certain things in the proper way, then you're going to have problems. And, like the nukes, for example, we should not have those. I'm surprised we haven't blown up the planet yet. And maybe that's why when all that nuclear testing was going in the 50s and 60s, that's why the guys are little visitors that are here now watching us, because we're disturbing a realm that we don't even know exists. And
they build these big old colliders and they're messing with the magnetics of the earth by building them.
Sure.
I mean, we're destroying our planet already because we're doing something that's way beyond the scale we should be playing with.
Right. Let's screw it all up by trying to figure it out.
Yeah. That must be their plan or something, because we know, for those who mess with it every day, we know they shouldn't be doing it. Not in any way. It's not constructive for the simple, stupid little purposes they're doing it for. I'm sorry, it's not worth what you're doing.
Well, I hate to say it, but in that book that is probably the most popular book on the entire planet that we're probably not allowed to talk about, in the first chapter of that book, there was there was a fruit on a tree, and the tree had a name.
Yeah.
And it was the one thing that you weren't supposed to do. And the one thing you weren't supposed to do is know to ask the questions to get the information. that was the one thing that you weren't supposed to do. We're pros at that.
Yeah. Oh,
we're pros at that.
Yeah, they apparently don't understand what they're doing if they still think it's a good thing to run that thing. They just don't get it. It's not in their head. They think they're achieving this super great thing about this, special molecule or something, and they're building some kind of thing that collides, and oh my God, we see a God particle. Let me tell you, there's other ways to see God, and it has nothing to do with a collider, okay? But
absolutely,
you want to make us all see the maker? Keep playing with that collider, and we're going to all see the maker at once.
I'm going to tell you a story from when I was a kid that runs directly parallel to what these scientists are doing. Okay. You see, when I was like maybe 11 or 12, me and my friend thought it was a good idea to put gasoline in a super soaker and
That's never a good idea.
see how far we could make a flamethrower.
Flamethrower.
And nothing went wrong, thankfully. But then there came a point in my retrospective knowledge where I realized that pressurizing gasoline in a plastic cylinder
Could be a
and
bad
then
idea.
lighting it on fire without there being any sort of check valve or anything whatsoever was one sputter away from being an explosive device.
Oh yeah, it was.
So retrospectively, I realized that I'm just thankful that that didn't happen. Retrospectively, I am actually shocked that it didn't happen. Okay. And at the time, I was just like, it was me and a friend, and it was my friend's idea because, like, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, what if, but I wasn't like, what if it turns into an explosive device? You see, this is not where my head was. I was like, man, I just don't know. That thing holds like a lot of gas. It's going to light a whole bunch of crap. What happens if it like gets out of control or something? Thankfully, his parents never watered the lawn, so it was all dirt and stuff. But, so it was like no harm, no foul, and I was like not for the idea just because like I'm like, man, I don't want to light something intentionally on fire though and have it go out of control. He's like, man, it'll be fine. Yeah, okay, fine. You get the point. You get the point though. Even in my act of caution, I didn't even conceive of the actual problem. And that's where I'm going with this. Like, even out of like, this doesn't feel like the right thing, like something could go wrong. It wasn't even in that perception that I realized what the real problem was. And here they are banging things together that they probably shouldn't. They have no idea that thing's 3 pumps past overpressure and they're just lighting it up.
So bad.
It really is. It's so bad.
I don't even want to add to the conversation because it would be worse. So let's move on a little bit because there's better ways to make that. But they're planning to push an asteroid away with a collider. But let me explain this to people so they understand that. What you consider a magnetic field has less to do with magnets than anything else in this world. You would be better off creating a dielectric and making a what is that on the Star Trek thing, gravity thing where you grab something. Anyway,
traction beam or something.
Tractor beam. You'd be better off you understanding dielectric and charge and make a tractor beam. It'd be a lot less hassle because what do you know about the core of any kind of asteroid? It may not be it may not be iron, buddy. You know what I mean? So you have to have something that works on everything, not just metal. So you better understand dielectrics and charge in order to do that, and you'd be way better with a tractor beam. So yeah, good luck. If that's your thinking, man, go back to where you came from and stop, because you obviously do not understand the mechanics correctly.
Well, I mean, interesting thing with the whole asteroid is, and I know they did like testing and it was successful or whatever with whatever they're doing now, trying to intercept it. But realistically, if you were to use the weapons technology that we have now, where you have like these cluster missiles and stuff like that, if you were to shoot one of those just out into orbit, and then you're able to predict like a general trajectory and then use plasma thrusters to like just put it in motion to proximity, and then once it's in proximity, have that thing release miniaturized plasma thrusters that are magnetic or whatever, and they just stick to the damn provided it is iron. If it's not, figure it out, use some kind of suction or adhesive or whatever you're doing, and have it stuck to the asteroid and then sit there and push it off course. And here we are sitting there trying to figure out how we could shoot one missile, have it break off into 27 different pieces and hit 27 different individual targets, when it's like, it would be reassuring if you say, oh, and we also took this application not only to destroy people that we don't want on the planet anymore, but also in the event of an emergency, this is something we could actually do. Like people might actually be like, hey, look at that. Good. You had the bad use. Now you got the good use. And look, I don't want to sound so passive that nobody deserves a missile up their ass. Like, I used to have the sticker on the back of my truck, peace the old fashioned way. It was a peace sign, said peace the old fashioned way, except the peace sign was made out of a B-52. Like, like warmongering aside, because I'm not for that, the truth is that having the ability to do it necessary, having the positive ability of the same technology is something that we're absolutely terrible at. We suck at it.
I grew up in a different bumper sticker age. They had no tailgating. It was a bit different phrase.
Yeah. Well, the other sticker I had right next to it was an InfoWars sticker, and we all know how that one turned out.
Oh.
Or Alex.
The best one I ever seen was you get close enough and you can read it. It says, "Are you this close to God?"
Yeah. Oh man.
I know that now this is a lot off base, but if you ever want to see how they frame things, man, they took that guy Alex Jones, who I've been watching for like way longer than I would probably like to admit, and they were like, he's the worst conspiracy theorist on the planet. The things he says is absolutely absurd. If you go back and you look at the things he said that were going on and the things that would happen and this and that, you're like, this is not conspiratorial at all. Like it sounds so outlandish because it is outlandish. It sounds outlandish because they're denying it and saying it's not true. But the fact is that it's so fresh off the event happening, or even ahead of time, knowing people's intentions and stuff, that nobody even believes it. But sit there, look at his old stuff, and then look back and then tell me that guy was full of it, because he wasn't. And that's what's sad. And then you hear some of the really whacked out stuff he says, and it makes you wonder. And I take everything everyone says, especially him, though, with a grain of salt. It's got to be a digestible thing. Not everything is true. But it makes you think some of the insane stuff that just simply hasn't come out that he's been saying, like, what's the truth in that? And they shut that guy down. It is what it is. What he did wasn't nice. But he's also not going anywhere. So.
Yep. You'll probably get another show, do something else. And
yeah, he already did.
I mean, I don't know. I thought that was all stupid. I think they need to get rid of those rules out of our government where you can destroy someone's entire life over a stupid lawsuit. And that needs to stop. I mean, sometimes they're going way too far with this stuff, and they need to be straightened out.
Abuse of power is what it is. That's just really harsh way of suppression.
To show slandering, or whatever, you should have to prove an economic loss, not an emotional loss. Like unfortunately, people feel all sorts of different ways about all sorts of different things, and how anybody takes in any information and emotionally responds to it is not the responsibility of the sayer, even if they have ill intent. Them hurting your feelings is not cause for that. And unless if they directly called for harm against you and that harm was caused, then it's free game. You want to sit there and lie, but it doesn't have a negative effect on somebody, then, like monetary, like they didn't lose their job or something, or, whatever, then how do you quantify that? Then it becomes a case of punitive damages. It wasn't nice to say that didn't happen. I think I need to put it out there.
Well, what they did to Trump and what they did to Alex Jones, it was a witch hunt, complete witch hunt.
Yeah, he's a great entertainer, though, if nothing else. Very, very, very entertaining to watch. So, Should I rip my shirt off and put my hairy boobies on here and start yelling at the top of my
Wow, we
lungs?
just went in the wrong direction really quick, huh?
Oh, I
There
forgot
was a
Gerald's not on to draw it for us. So
I look away for a second and we just went in the wrong direction. Like totally off the rails. I don't know what the heck that was.
yeah. No.
Yeah,
Speaking of
we
Gerald, that presentation he put out was absolutely fantastic. So if anybody's tuned in that hasn't seen it yet, absolutely have to go to Gerald's channel and check out his first part one of the video. I think that it really does explain it so well, and it's been long awaited. So
Well, I wanted to take a look while we're all here.
yeah, I think
Gerald
we
said
should absolutely.
Well, he put out a couple of videos too, and it had to do with a video that I put out. So let me show you real quick the one that I put out, and then we'll see what Gerald did, because we go back and forth in the videos that we do. So I'm excited to see it. So hold on, let me. You guys see that? Yeah, okay. So, just so you guys know, that acetal sand is just mud. It's literally mud from outside. That's all that is.
You
It's
you
not-
ought to clean your light switch every so often, then Nathan.
Yeah. It's I
It's a little
don't
muddy.
want to say this. It's not so much about the light and the energy. It's what's happening to me in the circuit when I go ahead and do this. So I don't want to say too much more of that. I'll get in trouble. But that's kind of where it's going. So
Right. It's
No.
where the energy is going when
Yeah.
it turns off. And yeah, that.
okay, so Gerald's got two on here, so let's look at both of them. Let's see what he's got going on here. Oops, hit the wrong button. All right.
Hey everybody, I'm going to try and make this quick. This is a follow-up video from the water video I did a few weeks ago. There's another part to this. I didn't put it on video the last time, but I had already done this test. So as you can see, it's all the same setup, the same battery, same coil, everything. I'm going to run the power to the LED bank from that center open core and that pickup coil. The pickup coil is going to a full wave bridge rectifier, but the LED bank is running on the AC side, not the DC side. So as you can see, the LED bank is on, both neons are running, our bucket of water is sitting beside us, and this is the control. So there's a lot more power flowing, but now we're going to do it with the water and show you how it's less power. And one more caveat we're going to add to it. All right, so here we go. The cables are in the water. We're going to turn it on now in 3, 2, 1. So now we got both neons running and the LED bank partially running. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, don't try this on home unless you know what you're doing. So here's the next part. This goes to the Rumble video. Now, shouldn't I be electrocuted by this point? Like I said, everybody, do not try this at home unless you know what you're doing. This energy is something that needs to be discussed. Thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a great day.
Oh, I love it already.
Well, that puts a new spin on toaster in the bathtub, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's not hot energy. That's the point.
Mhm.
It's cold energy. We're dealing with a total different animal here. Hot energy, you'd get zapped. Cold energy, you don't. And there's another part into it that we can't really say, but I'll say this about it. If the water carries the frequency and the power to the other side, then it must hold it in some capacitance. That's probably as close as I can say it without saying it.
Well, I mean, I could build on that without saying it. Of course, it has capacitance. It also has memory. And not for anything, too, but there's an awful lot of surface area there when Gerald's hand is physically in the water. There's a lot of surface area there. So there's a lot of, that's where I'll end with that.
Okay, so he's got a second one.
Here's part 2 of the water video and a follow-up to Tesla's secrets. This is another secret that we're going to release. We'll get rid of the water. I'll show you a control by turning on the LED. And then I'm going to show you what type of energy we're playing with here. Don't try this at home, everybody, unless you know what you're doing. This is something that I do not recommend. But if you're playing with this energy, then you'll understand. All right, in 3, 2, 1. I've now completed the circuit with my body, and the LED is running, but not entirely because there is resistance within the body. All right, we're turning it on again, and it is running from the AC side of that full-wave bridge rectifier there, not the DC side, so it could be just running straight from the coil, but it makes it easier for wires not to touch when I do that. All right, everyone, this is the next secret in Tesla Tech. I hope you all have a great day.
So you saw it through water. You saw it through a person. It's no different than what we're doing with the mud video. It's the human body is acting different to the energy. It's allowing the circuit to pass right through. And, oh, man, I wish I could say the last couple sentences on that. But, yeah, it's the next level of this tech. And like Gerald said, it's the Rumble video. We're not allowed to say it on YouTube, but it'll be the next evolution of what's going on. And being with the videos that I showed and Sean showed with the sand, and you start to understand the glass, there's a lot more going on here. It's more like we're creating or recreating what the earth is doing in almost every way. We're producing the energy. We're showing the energy flow. We're showing the outcomes of the energy. We're showing how all the frequency and everything works in the energy, and then what it does to everything that's on the planet.
Yep.
So anyway, yeah, can't say too much more about that. I am excited. Great job, Gerald. Great job. Now you're going to be pushing me. You know what I mean? So I know the next test I have to do. And well, let me say that first I'm going to replace the glass in my setup with the diode, just a straight diode. And I want to see if that curves the problem, because if I get past messing with my Tesla coil with the frequency, but I still get the full range of power, say goodnight, man. This circuit's going to get way more powerful real quick, because now I can amplify it as much as I want. I usually don't put it over 20 volts. Wait till I pull 60 to 70 volts on this sucker, okay? And then it goes way colder than it's supposed to, right? It's going to draw it to be much, much colder through the system. I have yet to play with the temperature side as much as I wanted to, and this may do it.
Yeah. Like I said in my disclosure, don't be a wussy. Go to 60 volts.
You gotta
don't want to test spontaneous human combustion either. I know it's cold energy, but still. Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually, got the right side.
Personality. You'll have a magnetic personality.
Yeah, if you don't know what you're doing, don't play with this tech. Just let everybody else do it. Don't.
Yeah, stay with the low voltage stuff. learn what the 12 volts, and then when you get more confident, more savvy, work your way up in the voltages.
Well, I want to push the 50-volt mark, and it goes to lighting up all the light bulbs in your house. And I'm just going to pull the ground through the whole thing. Or should I say the ground's going to pull it? Either way you want to say it, it's going to light up every light bulb in there at about 40 volts on DC. And what do you think, like 30 of those neon bulbs? I might be able to get that many if I do it right. So
Yeah, awesome.
I could do it with 10 at 20 volts. So yeah, we'll have to see how that works out, because that right there would probably trip people out. But what the hell do I do with all those light bulbs when I'm done? I mean, my wife's gonna look at the Home Depot receipt and go, "Why are you buying bunches of packs of light bulbs?" You know what I mean?
Your house. Well, Christmas is coming. Your house will look like the Griswolds.
Oh
And you
yeah,
could have every square inch of your house lit up. There you go.
I'll just trip people out and put a ring around my house so they can identify, this is me. This is the guy that did it right here. Come and get me.
UFO landing pad.
Oh boy, this is the guy that did it. Yep, it goes right back to that book I told you about. The one you still haven't read. Oh. Yeah. That was crazy, man. That's really good stuff. You should put those lights around like the perimeter of your Graviflyer, so it like something.
You should have seen the first time that I did it in my front yard. Okay. I have sand in there, like I said before, and I got this fake grass that hangs out over top of it. But when it rained, all the sand is wet. So now I put my Tesla coil in that sand. And like John proved in his experiment, guess what? It all became conductive. So I had on the perimeter, there were a bunch of 4-foot lights around it, right? And all of a sudden it was like daylight in my front yard. It was like 2 a.m. and it's like as bright as it could be. And I'm just looking around going, oh my God, I'm going to get in so much trouble for this. I had to go in and make sure all the shades were down in the house and everything so they couldn't see the big ginormous lights outside. And I'm thinking my neighbors are going to start complaining and stuff. But how do you explain to them, hey, my whole front yard is lit up because I understand how electricity moves through sand? They're going to be like,
I gotta be real. You should like have a party trick, man. Just like have it rigged up in your front yard. Invite a couple friends over that are none the wiser to any of it, and just pretend like you're. Oh yeah, I have to change out all these light bulbs in my house or something, and then just like throw them on the lawn and have them light up, and have the person be like, "What's going on? This is mental."
oh yeah, God.
Or like you play it up real good, like you'd be like, so I learned this magic and I could like harness the power from the sky and just like say like a fake magic word and be like, here you go. But then have like an on-off switch or something.
Yeah.
So it'd be like, here, you try. Oh, it doesn't work.
All the skunks and all the gophers and all the beavers will be jumping out of the ground and
Well, I thought about messing with people and just put on a shepherd's outfit and make sure my cane was the light bulbs so that every time I walked and touched the ground, it started my light up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they would think it's a battery or something silly. Like nobody would even, like their mind wouldn't even.
Oh, well, we'll just leave off the
happening.
main part then. We'll just use the light sticks and walk with it.
Something.
That'll teach them.
Or lay on the ground and then put a light bulb on. You're like in your belly button or something, you know what I mean? Or in your mouth like Uncle Fester. Is that what he like? No.
Your belly button starts the light bulb. You'll never
Better
live that one down.
Want to see a trick? Yeah.
Oh my God, I've seen that video where the guy sticks a light bulb in his rear and it starts to light up.
I never saw
I'm
that.
not
video.
doing that.
I've heard of green energy before brown energy. Come on now.
We're hitting the brown note.
The brown note. Why do I have a suntan on the inside of my butt cheeks?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean,
That's
one
terrible.
more thing that worth bringing up while we're on today anyway is like not only this community but just like the entire fringe community as by and large. It really seems to be a growing and expanding thing, you know, and there's a lot more personalities not that aren't doing their own experimentation necessarily, but more focusing on like the research and interview aspects of it, pulling up old information too and resurfacing it and stuff like that. You know, that it, that just simply wasn't there like a year or two ago. And now I don't want to say it's saturated because it's not, but it's expanded so much and with such a following on a regular basis that all these things that we're talking about, as outlandish as most of it is, it's not all that dissimilar to a lot of the stuff that comes up on these more populated and mainstream platforms. You know, we take a whole nother edge to it because it's like you know, fearless fearless personalities at work here, you know. But
What I was thinking too is, that UFO conference they had this week, and they were talking about free energy devices. So, there's a lot of people out there that watched this conference that weren't into the free energy thing. Now might be curious about it and start looking on YouTube and seeing what some guys are doing out there. So this kind of opens us up a little bit and gives us a little bit of some um, exposure uh, to the fact that maybe free energy is a real thing, and let's go check out, see what some guys are actually working on. As curiosity, right? So,
yeah, I'm actually surprised that because I know those bigger channels, whether they'll say it or not, I know they watch this. You know, I hate to say it, but it's true. But they'll name drop and mention certain specific people that have more exposure, but they've never really referred to any of this work directly. And even in so that makes me think like what the holdup is on that. Because even if it's just even if it's creditless and just saying there's some guys out there tinkering in their backyards, even if it was just like that, they're not really bringing that to light, but they're bringing less credible stuff to it. So I don't really understand the dynamic there, and I'd be a little remiss to think that they're not watching it. Even like they might not watch all 3 hours all the time or whatever it is, but I doubt that they're ignoring it.
Well, they're taking what they think they see is happening in their minds, how they perceive it. Then they're trying to put it into technobabble and then explain it in that language. Well, the problem is they don't understand it as well as they should. And the best thing they could do is just reach out and contact one of us and ask us, hey, what's really going on here? And then get your questions answered, then bring it out to people. And in your different way you speak, you'd be a lot better off. It's not like this community is not willing to help. We all are. Come on here and ask me questions. I mean, ask Gerald questions. We're both happy to answer. There's some things we may have to tell you off air and you may have to keep to yourself, but it's not like we don't want to answer. Mike would probably answer them too.
Yep, and I think that's sort of the motive behind me bringing it up is, I don't know who, if anybody here wants that sort of exposure, but at the same time, I think that there's gaps or misunderstandings happening on those other platforms that could easily be filled by the discussions that are just commonly had on a day in, day out basis on this channel. And I don't think that they haven't seen any of it. So, if they are out there watching, maybe they do want to reach out and have that better understanding. And, that would be one way to really bring exposure to the cause here. And
well, you know what? Look, I see it like this. get on the train now or be forever left behind. Because at this point, we've just scratched the surface for what you think. You know what I mean? This is like your whole world right here, and we've already done that. We're out here. We had to bring it back so that we can get you guys to understand it, is what it is. And we're way beyond that. So what I show maybe on my channel might be, 3-4 months behind on where I'm actually at with it. It's just, you go over the test again and again and again. You go, how much do I want to show and which direction do I want to point this in? Which one is something that not everybody will understand? So, yeah, there's a lot more here scratching the surface. And we kind of in this community look out for each other, and whoever needs to go first goes first. Then the rest of us go, and then we push each other to get to the end. And it's going to start dropping hot and heavy. I mean, look, we're taking sand, for God's sakes, that's filled with water, and we're going to light up things 10 to 15 feet away. How many times do I have to do that before you start realizing that, hello, wake up, we're here in a different era. We're no longer playing by your original rules. There's some rules that you need to learn. And then guess what? As soon as you are the first to do that, you can write all the physics papers in the world that you want. You can explain the other half of energy. And let me tell you what, then everything starts to get corrected. Everything starts to fall in line, and you start to finally understand what we're trying to get to here. And man, for the guys that want to do that, yeah, you're going to be all right. For those who want to stay in the past and write the same paper just in a different perspective, good luck.
Well, the guy at the UAP hearing from NASA, he was the biggest proponent for saying, like, and I also understand that he probably has some political concerns too, because I mean, NASA is a huge waste of money, and they're a bureaucratic organization that basically did nothing with all their funding, and what I'm sure it's brought advancement that maybe hasn't been attributed to them, but realistically, what have they done in 3 decades? Like, not all that much, and everything they do costs so much money over their own inflated budgets. And he's sitting there saying, hey, listen, we're the guys that should be in the know, don't you think? Like, do you think maybe you give us this information so we could work with that and we could develop some stuff? And the answer to that for me is probably no. But I think, like, in my opinion, like, they shouldn't for that purpose. But the information should be out there for people to be developing. That's it. But for them, maybe not. And that just goes right back down that same exact circular conversation of disclosure. Should you even do it or not, because of the implications? When that was the purpose of this entire cast, so we don't need to go there again.
I got news for you. I just don't care. I'm just going to release it. I'm not looking to make $1 on anything. I don't care. It's not one of those things for me that I need the financial money to go do this or for my experiments. Look, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to continue to do it for the betterment of the community and to get us further ahead. I want it to be where we live in a better world later, and I'd like to be more in harmony with nature instead of fighting against it. If you can accomplish those goals, man, by all means, let's do it. So I won't file a single patent. I will not trademark anything. I'll put it out there, and I don't care if you do it and you say I can't do it, I'll still do it, because that's the way it's going to work. And I do experiments. They're free. You can watch anyone you want. Talk to me about it. Look at it. Ask questions and then write papers, and have a great day.
Yeah. No, that's been your that's been sort of your mantra from the get-go, and it's super respectable. And unfortunately, and I wish more people would just be like that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I hear you. This is why I never went into business too, is because I almost feel like it's criminal to, like, like not just give away. Like, you know, I it's always like an act of doing for me. So it almost feels like wrong to like make too much money off of like somebody else. You know what I mean?
So let
It's-
me ask you this. If you knew the secret to the Great Pyramid and how to make it run, and how to make it produce energy, and why it's doing it and what's going on, would you feel right about going and patenting something like that, knowing that however many years ago it's created, they already invented it, and you're just trying to re-understand it? Do you feel right about taking credit for like, oh my God, I'm the inventor of this, when all you're doing is replicating something that somebody did thousands and thousands of years ago?
I think it's, you know, and that's always the thing about discovery is we're always on an individual basis discovering new things all the time. And, you know, just when you discover something, just because it's widely known by many other people doesn't mean that that's not significant. There's a difference between discovery and taking credit for that discovery in the personal realm versus the overall realm. And I think that that's where the differentiation is. It's like, you know, if you're going to sit there and be like, I figured it out, that's cool if you're the one that figured it out, how it worked. But you know, you didn't invent it. It was already there.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where it's at. And I think that that's one of the things too, is what is an inventor really? You know, my dad had an old saying that probably can't say on here, but I will abbreviate it so I can. Every generation thinks that they invented the BJ, you know, and then he'd follow that up by saying, I hate to inform you,
Yeah.
but your great grandmother probably loved it.
Wow.
man,
I knew it was going. I just couldn't avoid it. Wow.
So yeah, my old man was a salty dude, but there was a lot of wisdom behind that. You know, like you know, he at the it's like you always think that you're finding something new, but the fact is that nobody is the first one to do anything. But you could potentially be the first one of this era to put practical application to something that was already known. And putting something to practical application and having the one being the person that has that be adopted by the masses is realistically the one that ought to be credited with that, because nobody was really inventing anything. Everybody's working off of somebody else's work. If somebody didn't figure out a copper wire, then there's no coil. That's what it comes down to, right? So you know, how you twisted it and what you did with it and what you put down it, this is the building thing of it, you know. So the credit to it ought to belong to everybody below, but the credit will ultimately be attributed to the person that has it be accepted and adopted and puts it to practical use. And that person is frankly deserving.
Yeah. Well, you write a book, make a movie about it. You know what I mean? Get your money that way. That's the way I see it. You know what I mean? That's all fine and good. You're not holding anything back from anybody. You know what I mean? And everybody would love to hear the story. So go for it.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's a great parallel to this too. You know, Hollywood ran out of movies to make like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. They ran out of movies to make. They literally made a movie about everything. So every movie that then comes out in the last 30 years is just really a rearranged version of something that was already done.
yeah, you know what I would love for a movie? I'd love them to take and put a planet between Jupiter and Mars and move the time clock back millions and millions of years ago and show an advanced society that was there, and then the cataclysm that happened and how they branched out to the rest of the solar system. That would be amazing. That kind of movie that has to do with our solar system, that makes you question things, that's actually in the writing. If you look it up in the cuneiform writing, it's there. That would be an awesome story. You know what I mean? Make it 3-4 parts. I could deal with that. But it's personal in the fact that it's our solar system. It's plausible because life is habitable in the Goldilocks zone. It makes all the sense in the world and be a huge blockbuster movie. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Vatican said that they had that technology and then they had to destroy it, right? They had the machine that they could, the looking glass machine where they could just like tune into a place in time and be an objective observer of an event, and you could literally make it a movie. Now, whether or not I believe that, I don't know, but I mean that whole entire thing is out in the ether, as far as
Oh, that'd be cool.
that being a thing. It's very cool, very very cool.
Yeah, see, they could do a movie about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be okay with that. At least I'm not watching the same thing in part 7 that I did in part 1. You know what I mean? On some of these movies. So, yeah, it'd be really cool.
Yeah. Well, as long as they don't stop making John Wicks, then we'll all be okay.
Yeah, that's a good movie. All of them.
Trust me, as soon as
Oh,
that squirrel met its demise, I was like, man, heads are going to be flying all over the place.
hey, Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, you said last night you had some kind of secret. What's going on?
I'm gonna make a release on what I've been working on, actual public release on what my plans are with the cell technology. So, yeah, stay tuned for that.
So you got a release on your cell technology that you're going to release? Is that what you said?
Yeah, but parts of it. We're discussing with my partner, and we want to get like the buzzword out that we're going to be putting this stuff out. That I'll be building some beta testing battery cells that I could give to people I trust to do their own evaluation, and yeah, stuff like that. So I'll be able to talk about the technology more than what I have been, to a point. Um, yeah, I just is to get more people informed, on what I've been working on. I'll be able to show the cells I've been working on. Yeah, so I'm gonna be more transparent with it. We're still in the development stage, so the elements that we're using inside, I can't totally disclose everything that's going on, but I want people to understand how that tech works at the molecular level, so it will get everybody's brain moving on what we're working on. It's nanotechnology, obviously, right? So when you can start transferring power using nanotechnology, interesting things happen. So yeah, it's gonna be like a slow disclosure kind of thing. But I definitely want to get some beta tests out and send it to you and Gerald and Ben, so you can test these cells yourself. And you know, what better to do than to make some cells and give it to my friends and let them beta test it and see what you guys think, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, Mike. But I'll be honest with you. We don't need to know the secret sauce of what's in it. I would just like to see you start implementing it in some of your designs for like
Right,
other applications. You know what I mean?
right, right. So what I want to do is I want to use that as the primary source to keep the Renegade running.
Oh,
So
that'd
that's
be
the thing,
cool. We
right?
could see the
So
limits of it. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
right. So if I could keep a battery charged for 10 years and the Renegade, because it's hyper efficient, that thing will just produce power day in and day out, day in and day out for 10 years, provided, mechanically the Renegade stays together, it doesn't break down. But now I've got a power source that doesn't run out of power, right?
Yeah.
And it's modular. You can attach it to other devices like cell phone chargers, laptop chargers, stuff like that. So,
Well, it also gives us a chance to see the reactance of it in the circuit. So if
mhm,
there's an anomaly that pops up, we'd be able to find it too. That'd be awesome.
sure, how it would react around, say, a Tesla coil, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to have power cells. You know what I mean? On my Tesla coil, I could just hit the switch and go and put it anywhere I
Yeah.
want. Would be awesome.
Yep, yeah, keep a capacitor bank fully charged all the time. You don't have to worry about. You always have that power in the capacitor bank and just let it go, right? And then when you go to bed at night, the cells recharge all your capacitor bank. By the time you wake up in the morning, everything's charged.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. Sean picked up some bismuth, and I kind of hope a little bit to the caveat to this is, I hope he makes that capacitor in the bismuth, and I want to see how your cell reacts to that capacitor. If that capacitor becomes amplified in the circuit based on how your cell works, that would be an awesome combination.
Yeah, yeah. You have to use a trigger circuit, a timer relay circuit, to use these battery or these cells properly. And yeah, if you use the proper cycle charging that I've been working on, yeah, they should last 10 years.
It's very cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm
Hey,
excited
Nathan,
about that.
there's, and this is off relevance to what's being discussed in the chat about like monitors and TVs and stuff like that. But it kind of brought up a thought that I wanted to, propose to you. Maybe you have the answer right off, or maybe an experiment ought to be done. But it's something that I talked to Brandon about previously that I think is super cool. How you use the jar as like a semiconductor, showing the glasses like a semiconductor.
Mhm.
It would be interesting to see if you were to run the same type of thing on a glass surface of a panel, whether it's a LCD panel or a plasma panel or something like that. Just to see when you put like a load on the other side, where you're picking it up, if it traces, and what the pattern of that trace may look like under different circumstances. And,
I
yeah.
think I may have one outside, like I don't know, like a 50-inch plasma or something like that is ready for the dump in. I might just take it apart then and put some power to it.
Right. Take it apart, take all the circuitry off, the whole 9 yards. That way it's like clean slate. And then just see if you could run it through, on top of the glass or through the glass and see if it gets the panel to trace what it's doing.
Oh, yes, I will do that. Real quick, you brought up cavitation when we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
Thing. Bismuth, when it grows with a cavity in the side of it. So resonating that cavity may be the reason why it shoots so drastically up in ability, in magnetic force when you turn it on. It may be that very quality that's doing it. Just like your rock, Joe. You when you look at it, the way it's poured and the way the crystals form and everything else in that cavity in there, it may have the same effect. That's why I think it'd be amazing.
I've done some reading as to some analogous type materials to what the rock was showing naturally. And right off the bat, the first thing that was coming up time and time again was bismuth crystals in a magnesium matrix. So the issue is that magnesium, obviously, it's a difficult metal to work with in terms of melting because it's
magnesium. Yeah, magnesium will basically explode at about 900.
Yeah.
So as soon as you hit about 900,
so I suppose what you would have to do is if you got like wide band magnesium ribbon, right? And then you made layers of the magnesium ribbon separated by like maybe a temporary outer structure, like something you 3D print or like a card slot, something to like keep it so there's gaps. And then you were to grow the bismuth crystals in between the plates of this magnesium, right? Like something similar to what we were discussing before. And then you were to fill those voids in between the magnesium crystal the bismuth crystal structure with a semiconductor. Like even if it was something like a low temperature setting ceramic or an air dry ceramic.
So hold on real quick. I saw how they did it. They heated it up on the stove, and then they heated ceramic so it doesn't blow apart as soon as you pour it in there because the hot metal. Build it like a hockey puck, okay, or just a small, cylinder like for little cakes and stuff. Put it in there and let it dry, and then you get the perfect area to make the actual, oh man, what did I call it before? The capacitor. You'd be able to take 2 aluminum plates and put it on both sides. You know what I mean? And it would have the correct form on the inside. Then you could take magnesium or whatever, or even the stuff that they, I believe it's the same stuff that Joel uses in his cell right there, and put it on there. Put a plate like this thick on there of the, a round plate. Put another little donut-shaped disc right there of the power cell. Put the bismuth in the center as the capacitor. I bet you would get a ton of energy out of something like that.
Yeah.
And the frequency would be off the charts because you'd be able to have cavitation inside of it with the magnetic value that's held inside there. So it should exponentially, be a massive power source.
Yeah, and magnesium is one element that we use in the cell. And the biggest hurdle for a lot of people, especially using magnesium in power cells, is the oxidation issue.
So I have a solution to that, and I know you're the pro on it, but I just want to give an insight before we get an answer to see if I'm on point or not. So if you have magnesium and then you suspend the magnesium in a vacuum with an acid to remove the oxide layer, and then you purge it with an inert gas, and then you have an introduction of a bismuth at that point, you could actually grow the bismuth crystals in an inert environment on a direct form of magnesium without there being an oxide layer. You could purge, and then you could purge it out from there with like oil or something like that.
Right.
Something along those lines.
First of all, a vacuum is very good. The second magnesium is exposed to air or any of the elements, that's when the degradation starts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as putting, say, acids on the magnesium itself, if you get a problem, you start creating dendrites. And dendrites is like the number one thing that destroys magnesium. So we've had to come up with a complex matrix of elements to basically create a blocker to the magnesium exposure. So if you create this matrix blocker, the dendrites will not form. If the dendrites
How quickly do the dendrites form?
Oh, they could start forming within a couple of minutes.
I mean, wouldn't you just necessarily need like like in the scenario that I discussed, like, is it possible to get rid of the oxide layer with an acid and then do an immediate purge just so it's, there's obviously another way that but I'm just kind of curious.
You're on the right track. That's what the complex matrix that we've developed does, exactly that. So it's a very complex problem, and it's taken hundreds of hours of experimentation and research into that. And some of the biggest laboratories in the world, we're actually, I think, a couple steps ahead of them when it comes to because a lot of companies out there, because of the way magnesium reacts, it's a very reactive metal. A lot of companies have stayed away from them. They rather use lithium or whatever, but there's other associated problems. Now you're getting into thermo problems. Obviously, with the lithium-ion batteries, they've always had a heat issue. So we went the other direction, and tackled the issue of how do we preserve magnesium at the atomic level. So we've made a lot of grounds on that, a lot of grounds. So that's about as far as I can kind of disclose on that. But if you can protect the magnesium from degradation, oxidation, and dendrites, then you have a sacrificial cathode that can last years. Years. So there's a lot more to it. Our cell's going to have probably about 5 different matrix layers. So it's a very complex piece of nanotech.
Yeah. No, you got my head going, you know. I was like that.
Oh, my head's been going for 2.5 years developing this. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's what I heard though, is that combination of magnesium with bismuth crystals, and it's got to be crystallized bismuth. It has effects similar to the rock, as far as ever the full spectrum. The challenge I think that people that try to replicate it were running into, I think, had to do with the oxide layer, because they weren't getting the bismuth to crystallize in the way necessary within the magnesium structure. For me, what that rings a bell is, aside from the issue of the oxide layer, provided you get rid of the oxide layer and act fast enough, because bismuth crystals, you could form like that immediately,
right.
probably in less time than the oxidation. If you were to make like a magnesium strip weave fabric, then with the gaps in between, you might be able to get a microcrystalline bismuth structure in between those, and then have it totally covered in bismuth, which would then prevent the oxidation in that circumstance.
Right. There's also another problem that's associated with a lot of this battery tech. It's called SEI. And what happens is when you activate the cell for the first time, the first shot of electron charge goes through the cell and will hit the anode. When it hits the anode, it creates this barrier layer on the very first hit. And what happens is that barrier basically creates a resistance on the anode. Because of this, after the cell's been activated, you lose about 20% of its potential. It's called SEI. You could probably look it up. I don't know the actual acronym for it, but it's called SEI. So you have to come up with a method to prevent that SEI from forming on the anode. And if you can do that, you won't have that 20% loss after you activate the battery. So we're working on some nanotech blocker that'll prevent that.
I don't want to say it. It's your baby. There's a couple of things that immediately came to mind, and I was like, oh, okay.
I want to go back to the bismuth, if it's okay, real quick. And something just occurred to me. It's a low temperature metal. So the heat in the normal coil would burn this stuff down, right? It would just create as a liquid. But the cold energy we're working with, and what Gerald has in his course specifically in that coil, is the negating of Lenz's law, just like Mike has in his, with the amount of energy at the cold energy. You see, in the bismuth itself, it falls right into line of how it's forming as a crystal and how it amplifies. It might be the absolute correct trigger to put on this metal to make this stuff interact the right way, because the hot side of energy is just going to be horrible for it, but the cold side would be amazing for it.
Yeah, what thought came to my mind is if you can somehow incorporate the bismuth with the actual core material. If you're using, like in my Renegade, I have a metal core inside the coil. If I could somehow come up with some kind of matrix of bismuth with the core. When the collapsing field hits the blotch wall, it could actually enhance the effect with bismuth. There'd be a reaction there. I've never tried that. It would be interesting to see what the result would be.
I mean, what if you were to take a mold in the shape of the core that you want, you form the bismuth crystals in the mold, and then ceramic coat it so you have a semiconductor coated bismuth crystal. That way
Yeah,
it's structurally sound.
It may replace the
Actually-
wire. It may
And
replace the
actually-
wire.
And you could actually go a step further. You could actually add to that matrix, you could add barium titanate, which is a piezoelectric
So hold on.
material.
If it's in capacitor form and then you put it in there, then you can run your anode and cathode on the end of the capacitor plate, use the bismuth in the center. You could put a piezo disc in there as part of your plate setup for your capacitor and amplify this bismuth as it goes through your actual coil.
Yeah, but
That
you might,
right there.
I'm sorry to pause you. You might not need to put a piezo disc because you could grow piezo right on top of the bismuth.
That's
Yeah.
right. And you can do that with barium titanate as well.
Yeah,
But
Barry,
it
there's a few
replaces
different
the
things.
coil. It replaces the coil. It may even work on the magnet side of making coils amplify better by using it instead of the magnet. There's a whole lot of tricks to this, man. It's a whole new world.
Yeah, that turns into a casting proposition at that point. Not that that's a big deal, but you would need to have casting molds basically.
Well, just make them out of ceramic. They make everything out of ceramic, and
It
if you
should be.
heat
I'm
it,
just saying, for you to get the shape and the shapes and geometries that you need, you would have to have that exactly, and it would have to be ceramic. It would have to be like injected ceramic, injected
Yeah.
into the ceramic.
You know what? Honestly, since I started this project with the power cell, the pottery shop supply store became my best friend.
yeah.
They have so many elements there, it's mind-boggling. Like today I went to the pottery shop again and grabbed a whole whack of stuff that I needed for the new build. And yeah, I got like 6 different elements.
Yeah,
They have
mind
it
you,
all
you
on
built the ceramics too, so the
Yep.
ceramic doesn't even need to have its base level attributes. It could be built up in layers and formation, depending on what your needs are.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Mm. You know what I'm thinking of? You know those little lava cakes that they make? That little cup that they put them in real
Mhm.
thin, you know what I mean? About this big around. That's the size I'm thinking. Get some bismuth, we'll melt it down, put it in those. That's the start for the first test. And just use that as your hockey puck center for the capacitor, and we'll start right there.
Hey, if you want to go a step further, get like some kind of transducer or something like that and hook that up to your melting vessel for the bismuth, and then have the crystal set in a resonant frequency that you plan on using.
Yep.
Set the ceramic in the same manner. When you're pouring out liquid ceramic, you have it oscillating at that resonant frequency that you plan, so everything is crystallizing in tune.
Yeah. You can create like say like a mold, and you can put a piezoelectric disc, a big one. I got the ceramic ones, put it right in the center, and then you can pour the bismuth on either side of the transducer, and then you can add your plates on the outside. You can build it layer by layer, right?
So hold on. I'm laughing because I just did this thing on glass. I just showed you how to put the frequency into something like dirt. Now, if you're asking me to put it into ceramic as we're building it, that's not a problem. If you're asking me into putting into glass while it's being poured into by bismuth and setting the frequency, that's still not a problem. We've already solved most of the tech to get there. If that's what we really want to do, it's already done.
Here, I'll put you a bit further too. If liquid or something being a high moisture content is a challenge, let's say, or a barrier to getting the results you want for the transmission of a current. You could also, because ceramic is so porous, you could also embed materials in just certain spots that you want that would relieve you of the need for having a moist system or a damp system, or it could be just closed at that point, so there's no evaporation.
Yeah, and the other thing too is you could use separator material. So if you have one element going against another element and one's liquid and one's solid and you don't want that to mix, you can purchase online battery separator material, which is porous. So it'll allow ionic flow through, but it won't let the liquids through, especially if you're making a complex matrix that if you have a liquid hit it, it would distort it or destroy it or wear it out, it'll degrade. You can put the separator material in between that will still allow the ionic flow without the liquids passing through that barrier. So there's an idea.
If I built the coil big enough, then putting this whole thing in the center of it wouldn't be hard to impart whatever frequency I built the coil at. I wouldn't have to mess with the heat, wouldn't have to worry about transference. I'd be able to do it right away. Yeah, that would be fairly easily, and then you can impart whatever you wanted into it.
Yep. And then, when you take your head to the next level of it, just think about all the opportunity that 3D printing opens up as far as like casting, sacrificial like molds and stuff for, if you wanted to, like, let's say you needed something that was pure copper in it and not just a doped material. You could actually make a structure out of plastic, let's say, that fits the exact circuitry pattern that you need for the copper element. And then all you do is you cast that in ceramic, and then you melt it out, and then you pour copper in and break it apart, and then you have you have a copper structure that could then be placed into another mold, and then you just build your other layers in it. Like, the possibilities are absolutely staggering and endless.
Yeah, I think we're on a path right now to building something amazing.
Yeah.
So
a lot we've been talking about right now is what I'm implementing in this power cell. So
nice.
Kind of yes. So yeah.
I'm gonna have to just buy some bismuth, run some electricity to it, and see the reaction to it. Then melt it. You know what I mean? See the reaction to it, and then go from there. But I think we're well on the right track of getting it to exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, I think that one of the difficulties with bismuth crystals is, even though it's easy to form the crystals, it's fast, it's efficient, because you could just redo it 100 times. There's very little control because they form so fast, and even though they're regular and predictable in their shape and structure, they're not really predictable in terms of their size and where they grow. I think that's one of the things that tends to be an obstacle with it if you're trying for some sort of consistency.
But if you create a shell, then you create an outer shell and you fill the in between with bismuth and let it set. It does, and you put the frequency into the outer shell, or both the inner and outer shell, and make the frequency go in between it. You're setting the frequency in it already. Now it's set in there. It doesn't matter how the crystalline pulls through the two parts.
I agree with that to a degree, but my understanding, at least, and I could be very wrong, was that the actual crystalline structure being present in the bismuth was actually a critical factor of it having its maximum attributes. I could be totally wrong with that. Obviously, I think that that just set bismuth in a frequency is going to give some sort of internal crystallization, but I don't think that the exaggeration of the structures is apparent as when the actual full terminated crystal is formed.
But
So,
that's
in other
what I'm
words, a
saying.
solid piece of bismuth is not the same as a terminated bismuth crystal.
Okay, but if it's setting to the frequency, that means the cavitation was set to the frequency as well. So,
Yeah, that could be.
and if that's the case, then it wouldn't really matter how big the crystals are in forming because they would form to the frequency. So,
Okay.
that would kind of solve that whole issue now if it works that way. But we all won't know until we do the first pour.
Yeah. Well, maybe the 10th. But yeah.
Maybe. Might take a
Maybe
while.
the 10th. It
But at
might
least
start
we'll
getting an idea after a few tries.
Yeah.
Well,
At least we
you know
have
what?
the idea
That's-
going forward.
Yeah, that's why the measurements of the elements that you use is critical, right?
Yeah, that's sort of it. Yeah. I think that this is definitely that. And not that the coils will ever necessarily be maximized as far as their development, but I think that once kind of the means to the end is there and the theory is all set on it and it's well, and I know it is at that point more or less, but once that's solidified, I think that this is the next avenue, because now you could start incorporating other things into it, into one thing.
Well,
So-
why run wires if your system is based around crystal that grows inside the ship? Why would you ever want to put wires in there and degrade it? I mean, this could be the greatest thing to get past that next set of technologies is build things in crystalline form and they function a certain way, a certain frequency, and we're done, man.
Yeah.
We don't need all this stuff that keeps breaking down. I don't need a semiconductor anymore. I don't need 555 timers. I don't need any of it. Just give me the right frequency and the right energy pattern, and we're set. That's basically where it's going.
I've been on board with that same exact theory since day one, so there's no sense in arguing it.
Yeah.
It's been one of those things that's been part of my mantra all along. So yeah, man, I'm on board, and I'm interested to see what the experiments show when it gets to that point.
Yeah, what it'll teach us a lot about our world and crystal around it and why it's forming and why it's using and why it's amplifying things in this world. There's a lot of it going on here, and we're just not realizing it's going on. But we see it. We look at these crystal caves, Joe, and we see it.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, though, it's all just incredible, man. It's the earth is incredible, life is incredible, and the fact that we as human beings have the wherewithal to even delve into these topics and then even be able to postulate how it might be possible to have this high degree of manipulation is just astounding. Bravo to everybody.
Just a little tidbit on the power cell that I was working on. I did some tests with the power cell. There is no inductor inside the power cell at all, but I was able to detect a back EMF inside the cell.
You got a back EMF inside the cell itself?
Yes.
Oh, look at that.
All right.
So there's a little tidbit.
A little more going on there than what you usually say.
More than meets the eye.
Interesting.
More than meets the eye.
Yeah.
Yep.
It might tell you why it's it's actually producing the energy that it is. That's interesting.
Bingo. Bingo. Very, very intuitive.
Right. Right. It's not breaking an NDA if you're not the one that said it.
Very intuitive.
Well, it would go along with how you're working on your Renegade device and what would lead you to search in that direction. It'd be the next obvious thing, yeah.
Yep. If you can get a back EMF in a device that has no wire.
Yeah. I'm giggling because it's funny.
Oh, it literally is based on what we just talked about. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like you solve the world's problems here in just one session, right? You get the outline of everything if you know what you're listening for.
Yeah, well, where it really all comes out of the back of the dump truck is when you realize all the shit that you're dumping into this thing is basically no different than an organite cell. Oh, did I say that? Well,
Oh my
you know,
God. Dude, Joe just said shit, and all of a sudden I hear from Mike's thing. Like, the wet part. Yeah, that was great. Oh man, the things on this show.
yeah. Yeah, well, we're fighting the good fight and tearing it apart bit by bit. You know, it's what it all comes down to. I claim to know nothing. I literally tell you right on my screen that I am the community idiot. So listen to nothing I say because it's probably not correct, except for when it is.
Ideas become things.
Right.
Oh man, that's so great. Oh,
Yeah, I'm always right except for when I'm wrong.
that's right.
I used to say that all the time. Yeah. I've lost my ego since then, so
Yeah.
that went bye-bye.
Oh, there goes the key.
Was that me?
Yeah. I don't know what you're doing over there, but it doesn't sound good.
You're supposed
No,
to hit
when
on the corner, Mike.
No, what it is I'm pushing my earbud into my ear. So it's probably making this huge suction noise.
I'm
It sounds
happy
like a
that's
wet
what you're
fart.
pushing, bro.
It sounds like a wet fart.
I'm happy that's what you're pushing.
It sounds like you're in the bathroom taking care of business, and we're just hitting the side effects.
Mhm. Here we are cracking the secrets of the universe, and you got Mike over there taking a shit. You know, whatever floats your boat.
Hey, don't knock it, man. Some of my best ideas come on the toilet.
Just listen. No judgment. No judgment. As the sink goes on. It was not your fault.
You sit on the toilet and your mind goes into a different dimension.
That's all right. I saw the pleasure that Nathan was getting earlier, sticking the rod into the mud. I was like, and at least it lit up. I'll tell you what. Every time I go to stick the rod in the mud, all I do is get smacked, smacked and corrected.
Oh, it totally ran off the rails there. Oh my God.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it seems to be a common thing on this show.
Oh yeah.
Please. Especially when I'm on, like then we're all throwing hot dogs down hallways, right?
You should have heard Sean the other night. We were on cracking jokes in the comments, and it was like the parent that looks over and said, "This is totally wrong." He's just like, "This conversation has gone totally off the rails here."
How about that disclosure, huh? Well, it's all right.
It's all good.
Oh man,
Gotta have some fun once in a while, right?
Yeah, that's it, man. Bring a little light to it. It ain't all titty circuits, you know.
Oh God.
Those are double DTT circuits. That's it.
My brain is shrinking.
The invasion of the body snatchers.
I'm just trying. Sean said I was smart before. I'm just trying to make him regret his decision to say that. Which I appreciate. By the way, that's nice of you.
Oh, we're all in trouble.
Amen. Thank God none of our women have the patience to watch 2 hours and 50 minutes into this thing.
All right, man. Yeah, it's almost 3 hours, man. I think it's time to be done. It's just getting it's only gonna get worse.
It's,
yeah, it's reached critical degradation. That's it.
We're in free fall.
Yeah, we are. Like, I could say it's gonna get better, but I know Joe too well. It's only gonna get worse.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The more I'm allowed to get away with, the more I'll get away with.
Yeah. Mike, thank you for stopping by and hanging out with us, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Your company is appreciated.
Yeah, I might even go online tonight. I want to work on the Renegade a bit, so yeah, stay tuned. Yeah, maybe I might go on for a couple hours tonight.
Hey, Mike, next Friday, you going to be back?
Oh yeah, I'm back. I'm back on days, so yeah, two shows coming up. So
okay, I have one question. It's probably better for off air, but I'm not going to wait until off air. I'm just going to outright ask it because I'm curious. What is Philip working on?
Philip?
Because I've been watching for months and I still don't know what he's doing.
Philip.
He's working on a few things. Philip in Montreal.
Oh yeah, Phil.
Yeah.
Phil's working on a bunch of things. He's working on what was it? I don't want to say it. Like deflection technology, like a I want to say it, not a personal protector, but a force field type of thing.
Okay.
Where, yeah, it just deflects bullets and stuff like that. He's working on the math for that, and he's going to present that as part of his presentation. He also works on light, how to understand light and the natures of it and stuff like that. So he's putting a lot of work, I know, on that, and he has some really cool experiments on that. He also works on anti-gravity. He's using amps to see if he can't reduce weight on the scale. So I'm totally interested in how that works because I use volts to do the same thing. So that one stuck with me.
Okay, yeah. I mean, because I've been watching and I always find what he's presenting and stuff to be interesting, but I never really kind of saw past whatever he was talking about to see what the projects behind it were. So thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
He's also a software designer too. So
okay. Yeah, I saw his little model that he was doing with the electrons and stuff. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, he's a pretty brilliant guy.
Yeah, no, he's very, very bright, and always like to hear what he has to bring to the table. I wasn't getting my head around what he was doing. Like me, I don't do anything, but I'm like, I don't do anything, people. Just a mouth. So,
I have something I want to show you guys before we take off. Let me just find it real quick. Here it is. We have somebody coming on Monday, and I want to show you guys this. This right here is the technology he's working on. I'm going to mute it. It's the MEG is what it is. And it goes back to Bearden's research, and he was talking about it. And you can see the magnets in there, get them as much as possible to hit the sides. And he's trying to create a field in there where the outside has basically free energy to the device. So in the way Bearden described it, it was more of a free energy device, and everybody's kind of reverse engineering it to get through it. And he's on here. This is what he's replicating. So he'll be on a Monday, and we'll be talking about this right here. I think it's going to be totally awesome. I haven't seen too many of these replications out there ever.
Yeah,
I like what I see. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
And let me spell his name because I always get the pronouncement wrong. Heliarc. So Hilaric or something like that. I know it's not his real name. It's just the name of his channel, but I can't spell or read. So anyway, yeah, he's coming on. And this is he has several videos on this. He also has a Bearden video on it explaining it. So this I think is going to be way cool.
Yeah, looks very cool.
Yeah, when Bearden tried to patent this device, he was stopped, so he was suppressed on the device.
Can't wait to see that thing in action. I really like how those coils are pinched in the middle like that. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so he'll do a full explanation of what he's doing and everything, and this seems to be the best replication I've ever seen of it. So that's going to be cool. And then he has some cool stuff on a pole shift that he believes coming. And Gerald had said the same thing, so I think that conversation is just going to be interesting in itself. So, yeah, we got some pretty cool stuff coming on Monday.
I love it. Can't wait.
Yeah, I'll leave real quick. I'm going to leave that in the description real quick, or excuse me, in the comments for everybody, so they could check out his channel and you'll know exactly what we're looking at come Monday. But that should be a really exciting show. So, yeah. Gerald, make sure you drink your soup or eat your soup, however you got to do it. Make sure you're there. Yeah. You've been sick lately, so.
Oh, he's been sick.
Yeah. Hopefully he gets better and, yeah, is able to be there. So this is his channel right now. I'll call it Hilaric, and I know I said it completely wrong. So that's what's coming up.
And a little housekeeping on my end. There's a possibility that the next 2 weeks I will not be able to do a Saturday because I'm moving.
Okay.
So between packing everything up and then going and all that sort of stuff, that might be kind of what it looks like for me. But I'll be sure to, if I can, still do it. And if I can't, then it'll be right after the holiday. I'll be making my return on that. And then aside from that, tonight I believe is a super moon. So, maybe take some time of peace and solace and, find yourself a little quiet time and, make a wish. You never know.
Fire up the Renegade, because I know on the super moon, my Renegade puts out a lot of power.
Yeah. So, if experimenting's your thing, take advantage of that too. And,
we're all going outside. That's tomorrow or tonight?
I think it's tonight, if I'm not mistaken. But usually because it's a super moon, you're going to kind of have a little window there, a day on either side. So
I'm gonna soak my front yard today. Then, we're gonna have some fun. Let's see how much we can light up out there. What do you think, Mike? You run that Renegade tomorrow or tonight and see how it works?
Yeah, tonight? Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Pull some numbers on it, huh?
Yeah, I've got the oscilloscope up and see what we get.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, guys, thank you everybody for showing up today. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, for coming by. Joe, appreciate it.
As always.
We'll see you guys next week on this show. And then Monday, we're going to be rocking it out. So I'm probably going to take tomorrow off. All right, guys. Thank you very much and have a great night.
Peace and love.
Take care.